Chapter 570. Chen Chongqing madly sprinted the entire way, his boots shattering against the mountain path as he left in a cloud of dust. In a few moments, he had already arrived at the waist of the mountain. He did not know how far he was from the Heaven Lake at the peak of Mount Han. He only knew that he had to hurry and run as far as possible. But in the next moment, he stopped in his tracks because he felt that something was off. He felt the stone bead heat up. Thunder suddenly boomed through the mountains. Was that the sound of several hundred stones being forcefully moved and breaking through the air? Soon after, there was the sound of a cliff collapsing. The sound grew closer and closer. The stone pearl that the heavenly tome monoliths had transformed into grew hotter and hotter, even becoming somewhat scalding. Suddenly, all the sounds disappeared without a trace. An object entered, or more accurately, barged into his eyes. It was a square seal. He didn't know what kind of stone it was carved from, but he couldn't see anything strange about it. The stone seal gently swayed in the wind. The seal was tied to a person's waist. It was that middle-aged scholar. Then, Chen Chongqing saw the several hundred heaven stones that followed the middle-aged scholar. They covered the sky and covered the earth with an extraordinary aura. They were clearly extraordinary objects that tried to restrict his speed and trap him, but they seemed to be like the seal, becoming his ornaments. This was a cliff, and on it was a shallow pit that had been dug out at some time to serve as a path. The stone pit was covered in moss. Chen Chongqing was at the bottom of the cliff, and the middle-aged scholar was at the top of the cliff, separated by only a few dozen zhang. You humans love doing this sort of self-wrapping thing the most. The middle-aged scholar looked at him and calmly said, I don't know if the Heavenstone array sealing off the mountain is a trap, but I do know that it will seal you to death in this mountain. Chen Chongqing did not respond because it was meaningless. He also did not feel despair in his heart because it was meaningless. His spiritual sense fell on the black stone pearl, and he prepared to enter the garden of Zhou to temporarily hide. He did not know if the middle-aged scholar had the ability to directly break through the spatial barrier of the garden of Zhou, if his and Su Yorong's original conjecture was correct, and this person had once infiltrated the garden of Zhou, then it would not be safe for him to enter the garden of Zhou in front of him. But behind him was a cliff. He had already entered a desperate situation, so he had to try. To his shock, or perhaps to his surprise, he was not able to use the black stone to enter the garden of Zhou. Nothing had changed. He was still in front of the precipice of Mount Han. Perhaps it was because the Heavenstone array of Mount Han had sealed off all space, or perhaps it was because the middle-aged scholar was so powerful that he could influence the laws of space at a sufficiently close distance. In short, he had not been able to enter the garden of Zhou and had lost his final trump card. But he did not despair. He raised the stainless sword, gripped the vault sheath, and gazed at the middle-aged scholar with a very calm expression. That was an enemy he could not defeat, but so what? A look of approval appeared in the middle-aged scholar's eyes. You should know my goal. Chen Chongqing nodded. The middle-aged scholar said, with a heart that cherishes talent, I will slowly eat you up. Chen Chongqing replied, I know the final move of the Mountly sword style, and I also know indiscriminate destruction. Senior Su Li once taught me the blazing sword. I can burn myself into a pile of ash. The middle-aged scholar smiled and said, Are you going to threaten me with death? Although fresh prey tastes better, I don't mind being merciful and killing you first. Chen Chongqing replied, But you still haven't killed me. Yes, if the middle-aged scholar had truly decided to kill him, whether he had the yellow paper umbrella, the thousandly button, or that letter, he would already be dead. The middle-aged scholar's smile gradually faded, and he expressionlessly said, In front of me, even if you want to die, it won't be so easy. I want to try. In Xuanyang City, when Wang Pu confronted Zhu Luo, he had said these 4 words. He wanted to try and see if he could stab Zhu Luo with his sword. Today, in Mount Han, Chen Chongqing had also said these 4 words. He wanted to try and see if he could burn himself into ash before his opponent could. The 10,000 swords hummed in the sheath, preparing for the final charge. The letter was clenched in his hand, ready to release the final sword at any time. True essence flowed with difficulty through his severed meridians. A storm stirred in his sea of spiritual sense as he prepared for the final combustion. When he made this decision, he was truly very calm. Of course, it was hard not to feel some reluctance. He still had many things that he had not finished. Time slowly passed. The 10,000 swords still did not leave their sheaths, nor did he burn. He was still alive. It was not because the middle-aged scholar had taken control of his body, but because two people had appeared in front of the precipice. Two men walked out from the ivy at the edge of the precipice. One of them had a head of white hair and a rather nervous expression. His eyes were especially filled with fear as he gazed at the middle-aged scholar. The other person had a face that seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of time, but it was impossible to tell his age. He wore ordinary clothes and had a very calm expression, like a tourist who had come to explore the world. But he was definitely not an ordinary person, because when he appeared, the middle-aged scholar no longer looked at Chen Chongqing, but at him. Previously, by the stream, not even Lu Qing, Xiaoda, or the Elder of Heavenly Secrets Heavenstone Array of Mount Han could truly move away the middle-aged scholar's gaze from Chen Chongqing. This was because the reason he had left Xuelao City after 1,000 years was precisely Chen Chongqing. To the middle-aged scholar, no one was more important than Chen Chongqing. Yet now, he was looking at this tourist-like man with such earnestness. The mountains and rivers on his face suddenly blurred and then vanished, revealing his true appearance. Was this respect or vigilance? Just who in the world was worthy of his respect? Did he need to be vigilant? Tianhai? The Pope? Or the White Emperor? No, this tourist-like man was clearly not one of the three saints. But to the middle-aged scholar, he was far more worthy of his respect and vigilance than the three saints. A chilly wind howled through the precipice. The night sky, torn apart by the several thousand heavenstones, was still dim and even seemed rather miserable. For a very long time no one spoke. The atmosphere in the precipice was extremely strange. The middle-aged scholar and the tourist-like man silently stared at each other. Gradually, wind and thunder gathered where their gazes met and then gradually faded away like drifting clouds. Chen Chongqing knew that the situation had finally taken a turn for the better, all because of this tourist-like man. But just who was this person? He simply could not think of anyone in the world besides the Divine Empress, the Pope, and the White Emperor that could make the middle-aged scholar regard him with such importance, to the point of temporarily letting him go. After some time, the middle-aged scholar finally spoke. His voice seemed incomparably sorrowful, even sorrowful. As expected, you did not die. The man faintly smiled. Not even His Majesty died, so how could I die? The middle-aged scholar looked at him with some pity. But in the end, he still died. Chapter 571. Who was dead and who was still alive? Hearing the middle-aged scholar's words, the tourist-like man fell silent for a while. He gazed at the distant mountains to calm his heart, gazed at the sea of clouds to feel the vicissitudes of life, and indifferently said, "Neither Sir nor His Majesty are people like him, so logically speaking, you should not have appeared here." The middle-aged scholar did not directly answer his question, saying, "Seeing you appear, we are finally convinced that this is not a trap." The man asked, "What do you mean?" The middle-aged scholar replied, "If this was a trap set by you, we really might have run into some trouble today, at least much more trouble than we have now." The man replied, "Not necessarily. Since he has always been at His Majesty's side, how could he not see through my trap?" The middle-aged scholar shook his head and said, "He did not agree with our decision, so this time we came alone." The man was somewhat surprised. His Majesty has always obeyed his words, so why didn't he this time? The middle-aged scholar turned to look at the mountains across the precipice. After a moment of silence he said, "We do not have much time." The man replied, "Your Majesty truly does not have much time." The time that the middle-aged scholar spoke of was clearly a concept on a larger scale. The time that the man spoke of referred to the fact that the Heavenstone array of Mount Han had already been activated. If the middle-aged scholar was not in a hurry to leave, he really might be surrounded by the supreme experts of the human world. "You want to keep us here for a while longer?" The middle-aged scholar did not turn his head. His voice seemed somewhat indifferent, still confident and tyrannical. The man indicated that his elderly companion should stand behind him. Gazing at the middle-aged scholar's back, he said, "In these past few years, I have not concerned myself with the affairs of the world. Neither you nor little Tianhai are bothered to send people to hunt me down. I very much like this kind of life and have never thought of changing it." The middle-aged scholar turned around and said to him, "You and him are both people that emperors and kings want to get rid of the most. You are able to live until today because you are smart enough. Of course, you are also strong enough. Whether it is us or Tianhai, if we want to kill you, we will inevitably encounter some trouble." The man replied, "Yes, in a little while, Tianhai and Yin will catch up and you will be in trouble." The middle-aged scholar indifferently said, "They won't be able to catch up. At most, some trash like Zhu Luo will come." The man suddenly looked at Chen Chongsheng and asked, "Why does His Majesty want to kill this youngster?" The middle-aged scholar looked at him and said, "Do we still need to explain our actions to you? I'm not your Emperor Qin." The man smiled and said, "In the past, I was used to asking His Majesty for a reason. Today, I am used to asking His Majesty for a reason. Please don't take offense." In this sentence and this conversation, the word, His Majesty, appeared many times, but it did not refer to just one Majesty. The middle-aged scholar mocked, "No wonder your family's Emperor Chern has never liked you." The man said, "It's all in the past. Why mention it again? Your Majesty, you really don't have much time left." The middle-aged scholar calmly looked at him and asked, "You want to protect this youth's life?" The man said, "That's right." With an indifferent expression, the middle-aged scholar asked, "What do you want to exchange for it?" "Of course, Your Majesty's time." The man said, "Time is life." The middle-aged scholar said, 1,000 years ago, you painstakingly led your cavalry across 10,000 li of snowy plains just to kill me. Today's opportunity is much better than that time. I don't understand why you would give it up, just for this unremarkable little fellow? If he really is an unremarkable little fellow, why does His Majesty need to specially come here to kill him? Although I don't know the reason, I can at least confirm that he is very important to humanity." The man said, "Your Majesty's life is obviously more important than his, but the problem is, I am not that fortune-teller at the summit. I don't think that using this youngster's life to exchange for Your Majesty's life is a correct choice. In reality, something like life can never be valued." The middle-aged scholar said, "Although this statement is absurd, it is also reasonable." "How could absurd be reasonable?" Normal people could not understand, such as Chen Chongsheng and the old man timidly hiding behind the man, but the two people speaking to each other understood. They were both outstanding figures throughout the ages, so their conduct was naturally different from the masses. The middle-aged scholar actually turned and left without the slightest hesitation, completely uncaring that leaving Shuilao City to come to Mount Han was such an important, such a risky move. To return without obtaining any benefits was such a difficult matter to accept. Because no matter how difficult it was to accept, one still had to accept the karma that had already occurred. The middle-aged scholar knew that the man was correct. In this life, the man had never said or done anything wrong. So he chose to leave. Watching the middle-aged scholar's figure disappear into the night fog, listening to the thunderous rumbles getting further and further away, only after a very long time had passed did the tourist-like man confirm that the middle-aged scholar had gone far away and would not return. Then he gave a light sigh, seeming very sorrowful. Can he break the heavenstone array of Mount Han? The old man hiding behind him this entire time finally dared to stand up. With some lingering fear, he asked, "If he can't break it, will he come back?" The man smiled. Heavenly Secrets has always thought highly of itself, so it's hard not to overestimate itself. The old man understood what he meant. He was saying that as long as he was not disturbed, the middle-aged scholar should be able to break the array in a very short time. He couldn't help but be somewhat confused, asking, if that's the case, if Milord had acted just now, it really would have been the best chance to kill him. 1,000 years ago, whether it was the experts of the human race or the demi-human race, what they wanted to do the most was to kill him, but the situation now is different. How is it different? He lost to Big Brother in one move, so he's no longer invincible, and he's already old. But I still feel it's a great pity. In addition, if we were to fight, what would happen to this little fellow? The man pointed at Chen Chongsheng. The old man turned to Chen Chongsheng and said in disdain, "It's all because of this little fellow that Milord's hands and feet are tied." Previously, when facing the middle-aged scholar, the old man had been particularly humble and respectful to the man beside him, but his words and expression towards Chen Chongsheng were extremely rude. After the grand examination, the position of successor to the Pope had been faintly established, so no one in the world would treat Chen Chongsheng with such impoliteness. Even his opponents would maintain the appropriate etiquette. It could only be said that this old man had seen far too many powerful figures in the capital, so how could he be so reserved just because of Chen Chongsheng's identity? Chen Chongsheng did not respond, because he was currently too shocked, unable to make any sort of response. In reality, when this tourist-like man began to speak with the middle-aged scholar, he could no longer say anything. A few words were enough to make the middle-aged scholar retreat. How could there be such a person in the current world? He knew who the middle-aged scholar was, and when he heard that conversation, he had already faintly guessed at the true identity of this tourist-like man. He was too shocked, even daring to believe it. Previously, this tourist-like man had said to the middle-aged scholar, "Don't mention those old and rotten matters of the past. No, those matters are all major events that will be recorded in the annals of history." They were all powerful figures that would inevitably be recorded in the annals of history, and they would assuredly have the greatest space and the most important position. "Little friend, why does he want to kill you?" Just at this moment, a gentle voice arose from the cliff, rousing Chen Chongsheng from his shock. He looked at the man walking in front of him, his mouth gaping, unable to speak for a long time. The man had a delicate and handsome appearance, his two eyebrows slightly stained with wind and frost. As he spoke, his lips exuded a faintly discernible scholarly aura, giving off an indescribably profound feeling. Chen Chongsheng stared at this face, unable to think about how to respond. He could only stare in shock. Even the hand gripping the hilt of his sword was slightly trembling. Anyone who saw a legend that everyone thought to be dead suddenly appear in front of them would probably have the same reaction. And this wasn't even mentioning the fact that this legend had always been the person he admired the most. His voice trembled as he said, "Sir is—" The man smiled and shook his head, indicating that he did not need to ask. "You can't say it, or else we'll suffer the wrath of the heavens." The old man stopped him from the side, his expression very serious, not like he was joking. Chen Chongsheng did not understand, but extremely obediently shut his mouth, afraid that if he really did speak carelessly, he would reveal some secret of the heavens and bring trouble to the man. Then, he lifted the front of his robe and unhesitatingly bowed to the man, preparing to pay his respects. The man did not have him kneel. He supported his arms and looked at him with a silent smile. His gaze moved down to a certain spot on Chen Chongsheng's body, slightly raising his eyebrows, as if he had discovered something very interesting. Finally, he He shook his head, gave a light sigh, and turned to walk out of the precipice. The old man followed behind him. Chen Chongqing hurriedly followed, but to his surprise, the man and the old man walked directly into the abyss beyond the precipice. At this moment, the darkness that enveloped Mount Han was gradually receding, as if welcoming a second dawn. A white cloud appeared out of nowhere, rising from the bottom of the stream. The man and the old man walked out of the precipice and landed on the cloud. The white cloud leisurely floated into the distance. This was what it meant to travel the world. The mountain wind was slightly chilly and the day reappeared. Presumably, the middle-aged scholar had already broken through the heavenstone array of Mount Han and returned to the north. Chen Chongqing did not feel the joy of surviving a calamity, nor did he even think about this matter. He only stood at the edge of the precipice, staring in a daze at the direction in which the white cloud had disappeared. Previously, when he awoke from his stupor, he originally had many things he wanted to say to the tourist-like man, but alas, he did not have the time. He wanted to tell the other that he had been to the Pavilion of Ascending Mist, that he had seen Sir's portrait there, that he had even read Sir's notebook, and that he had even taken the black stone that Sir had left behind. Thinking of this, he took out the string of stone pearls and gazed at the black stone, not speaking for a long time. After some time had passed, he bowed deeply to the ground in the direction in which the white cloud had disappeared, then turned and walked in the opposite direction of the sea of clouds. However, before he had even taken 2 steps, he collapsed to the ground. Chapter 572. Where the white clouds scattered, there was a verdant valley. The valley was very quiet and full of oddly shaped vines. From time to time, one could hear the growls of powerful demonic beasts in the forest near the cliff. However, none of the demonic beasts dared to approach this place, because there was a majestic ancient temple here, and also because there were 2 people living in the ancient temple. The old man asked in confusion, "You've been living in seclusion for hundreds of years. It's not easy for you to go out. Why are you back so soon?" The man smiled and said, "It's not like we didn't gain anything. At least we got a glimpse of that young man." The old man asked, "Did you go there just to see that young man?" The man replied, "That youth is a disciple of Shang and is highly regarded by Yin. Little Tianhai even specially invited Tianji to visit him, so I can't help but be curious." The old man said, "You don't look like someone who would return to the mortal world out of curiosity." The man said, "That youth obtained my notebook and the heavenly tome monoliths, and attracted a night of starlight in the mausoleum of books. Many people say that he is very similar to me in the past, so he is naturally different from me." The old man asked, "Then what did you see?" The man's expression turned grave as he said, "That young man is about to die." The old man was shocked and asked, "Then what should we do?" The man walked to the front of the main hall of the ancient temple and looked at the dilapidated Buddha. He said, "Everyone wants to go against heaven and change their fate, but they don't know that all karma is within karma. The more they want to change their fate, the more they can't leave the river of fate. I can't see what his fate will be like in the end. In the end, it still depends on him." "What about Qiu Shanjun and Su Yurong? When are you going to take a look?" "We'll see." The man looked at the sky outside the temple and said, "It's going to rain. Let's finish today's painting quickly." The exterior of this ancient temple was extremely dilapidated. It was unknown how many years it had been abandoned. The Buddha statues in the halls of the temple were the same. However, the inheritance of the Buddhist sect had long been lost on the mainland, and ordinary people had never heard of it, so this scene was quite normal. In fact, the fact that this ancient temple could still exist until now was something that no one could understand. However, the murals on the stone walls of the ancient temple were very complete. Some of them even looked very new. It was obvious that they had been added in recent years. Those murals were extremely beautiful. It could even be said that it was impossible to find such an outstanding painter in the world today. If Chen Chongqing were to look at these murals, he would definitely be reminded of the portraits in the pavilion of ascending mist. The old man stood on the wooden frame, holding a paintbrush against the wall in preparation for work. In the end, he could not help but say, "I really should have tried it just now." The man was sitting on a broken bell in front of the hall, slowly drinking from a pot of spring water. Hearing this, he smiled and said, "I can't beat him." The elder put down the brush in his hand and looked out of the hall. Last year, Suli was outside Shualao City. The man didn't answer the question and just stared into the distance. The old man sighed in his heart and stopped asking questions. At the time, the demon lord was in Shualao City and Blackrobe was outside, so how could he do anything? How could he do it? On the shore of the Red River, at the top of White Emperor City, the cloud slowly descended and then vanished. Whether it was ominous or auspicious was hard to say. On the dew platform, the Tianhai Divine Empress no longer looked north, turning and walking down the platform. In the depths of the Li Palace, the Pope gazed pensively at the green leaf. Neither his posture nor his expression had changed. The darkness enveloping Mount Han slowly tore apart and then drifted into the distance. The world returned to daytime. By the lake at the summit, the elder of heavenly secrets lightly wiped the blood from the corner of his lips and gazed north into the depths of the snowy plains. A hint of turbidity appeared in his ancient eyes, making it somewhat difficult to see what lay ahead. A scholar appeared at the southern foothills of Mount Han. The red flower tied to his pinky finger was stained with the dust of several thousand li, no longer as bright as before. A man wearing a bamboo hat appeared in the small town outside the memorial arch of Mount Han. His cheeks, rusted by the sea breeze, were brimming with solemnity. They had come too late. The middle-aged scholar had already left Mount Han, but they did not leave. Together with the two prefects of the orthodoxy, each wielding a precious treasure, they vigilantly guarded the perimeter of Mount Han, guarding against any strange movements. On the long battlefront in the north of the continent, the great Zhou Northern Army and the cultivators dispatched by the sects and noble clans of the south to reinforce the north received secret orders from the various armies and began to nervously prepare for battle. The demi-human army began to move along the Red River, advancing to the snowy plains to the northwest. On the way, they slaughtered a small demon tribe. Yet neither the divine generals of the great Zhou imperial court that had issued the order to mobilize troops nor the leaders of the sects and noble clans of the south knew why all this was happening. The army headquarters and caves were filled with the sounds of discussion. The atmosphere became abnormally tense, making everyone feel extremely uneasy. As for the common people of the small village outside Mount Han and the people of the capital, they knew even less about these matters. They cooked, worked, and lived as usual. They had no idea that on this seemingly normal summer day, after 1,000 years, the war between the humans, demi-humans, and demons had almost erupted once more. All this was because the demon lord had left Shualao City. He went to Mount Han, and then he left Mount Han. Very few people knew that the demon lord had returned to the Central Plains. And even fewer people knew that when the demon lord left Mount Han and returned to Shualao City, he had encountered a person in the snowy plains. Even after a very long time, this meeting would not be known by the common people, yet it was the most important meeting in this entire affair. They had never met, but they had not met by chance. That person had been waiting in the snowy plains for the demon lord for a very long time. Wind and snow filled the sky. That person's entire body was white, from his hair to his clothes, from his eyebrows to his lips, everything was white. It was not a white painted by snow. This white was even whiter than snow, so white that it was terrifying, so white that it was terrifying. From 1,000 years ago to now, there were not many people that could calculate the demon lord's return path, wait for him on the road, and even dare to wait for him here. To be more precise, that person was not a person, but a great demon of world-shaking cultivation. The White Emperor of the West. 1,000 years ago, the demons had moved south and the continent was thrown into turmoil. Experts emerged in large numbers and left behind countless battles that would go down in history. Of these, the most famous were naturally the battle between Zhou Xuanba and Emperor Taizong in Luoyang, as well as the battle to the death between him and the Demon Lord. There was another battle that was even more secretive, but in terms of the cultivation levels of the two combatants and the intensity of the battle, it was definitely not one bit inferior to the previous two battles. It was the battle between Chen Xuanbao and Zhou Dufu, the strongest beneath the starry sky experts in the Garden of Zhou. With Chen Xuanba's death, Zhou Dufu's disappearance, and Emperor Taizong's life returning to the Sea of Stars, of the four strongest people of the continent, only the Demon Lord remained. In the following 1,000 years, there were no more heaven-shaking battles like those three. There had not even been a battle that approached that level. Until today, when they met in the snowy plains. Since they had met, they naturally had to fight. I need to prepare for my journey back to the Qin Kingdom. It will probably take around 7 days on the road. I need to prepare a draft and am currently working on it. I wish everyone a happy weekend. See you tomorrow. Chapter 573. The Demon Lord against the White Emperor. Whether in terms of cultivation level or status, this battle had the right to be compared to the three battles from 1,000 years ago. Somewhat regretfully, there was no audience for this battle. There had also been no audience for the battle between Zhou Dufu and Chen Xuanba in the Garden of Zhou, but afterwards, Zhou Dufu had recounted the details of that battle many times, and in an extremely rare display of undisguised admiration, even clearly stating that he wanted to proclaim Chen Xuanba's awesomeness. As for this battle, neither the Demon Lord nor the White Emperor spoke of it afterwards, so no one knew the details of this battle. No one even knew the result of this battle. The entire world only knew that after that day, on the snowy plains to the north of Mount Han, a massive pit had suddenly appeared. This pit in the snowy plains was around 30 zhang deep and 10 some li in circumference. Standing at the bottom of the pit and looking around, one would feel like they were still standing in the plains. This was the hardest mark left behind by this battle, as well as the most direct description of the intensity of the battle. The area affected by this battle was even greater. 70 li to the north of the snowy plains was a cold-resistant forest. After the battle, demon hunters who were familiar with the area were actually unable to find the slightest trace of that forest, and the wolf cavalry hidden in the forest had also strangely disappeared. Even the world 70 li away had been destroyed, let alone the snowy plains at the center of the battlefield. There were no traces of life at the bottom of the pit, only rocks that had once been incomparably hard but now been pulverized. There were also no corpses. The snow foxes and even smaller creatures that might have once lived here had already vanished without a trace. Only a few bloodstains could be seen in the depths of the gravel. Even more frightening was that the bottom of the pit was still warm from the battle, scalding to an unimaginable degree. Wisps of smoke rose from it, as if a star had once fallen here. Such a scalding pit naturally could not accumulate snowflakes. When the snowflakes fell, they melted into water, gradually forming a thin stream, then a lake. As the wind and snow continued to blow, the water level continued to rise. This continued for many years. Thus, on the snowy plains to the north of Mount Han, a blue lake that never froze all year round appeared. Just like the Heaven Lake at the summit of Mount Han. Of course, this was a matter for many years to come. As for back then, no one knew that a pit had suddenly appeared in the snowy plains to the north of Mount Han, and that in a few years, it would become a lake. And no one knew that a battle had taken place here, so naturally no one knew the result of this battle. There were only 3 spectators for this battle. After the battle ended, 2 of them walked out of the snowstorm. The one walking in front was a middle-aged Taoist who looked very ordinary. The one walking at the back was a young man who was not ordinary at all. He was lame and had a crutch under his armpit. His black hair hung in front of his eyes, covering half of his face. They were precisely Taoist Ji and Yuren, who had disappeared from Xining village after no one had found them. The White Emperor looked at Taoist Ji and slowly nodded. Taoist Ji leaned forward slightly, returning the greeting. The White Emperor glanced at Yuren, then turned and vanished into the snowstorm. Taoist Ji gazed northward and calmly gazed for a while, then he brought Yuren and disappeared into the snowstorm in another direction. From start to finish, no one spoke. In the snowy plains of the north, hundreds of miles away, Black Robe put away the somewhat tattered metal plate and looked south. The snowy wind whistled and lifted a corner of his hood, revealing the lower half of his face. There was no expression on his face. Coupled with his pale green skin, he looked exceptionally demonic and terrifying. Yet even if one could only see a very small part of his face, only his lower jaw and mouth, it still made one feel that he was very beautiful. To make such a demonic face feel beautiful, just how beautiful was the face itself? Not long after Taoist Ji and Yuren disappeared into the snowstorm, he pulled on his hood and turned to walk north. Before he could even get close to Xuelao City, he was blocked by a massive shadow in the snowy plains. This was an extremely large mountain-toppling fiend. The ruthless and terrifying mountain-toppling fiend seemed extremely docile at this moment, because it was a mount. A cold and ruthless voice rose from the mountain-toppling fiend's horn. It seems that this commander is still a little late. The demon commander sat on the horn, propping up her chin as she coldly gazed at Black Robe. Her armor was covered in golden lines and green rust, looking extremely dazzling. Her voice was abnormally cold and coarse, grating like metal scraping against each other. Black Robe paid no attention to this second-ranked demon expert. With his head lowered, he silently prepared to walk past. The demon commander's voice grew angry as she shrilly yelled, "As a military advisor, you actually failed to dissuade His Majesty. Just what crime do you deserve?" Black Robe's voice was very indifferent and tasteless. "His Majesty has safely returned, so why should we worry ourselves?" The demon commander was even more enraged, loudly rebuking. "His Majesty is heavily injured, and you dare say that I am worrying over nothing?" Hearing this, Black Robe finally stopped. Raising her head to the mountainous mountain-toppling fiend, she coldly said, "You dare test His Majesty's injuries from me? If His Majesty learns of this, you will die a very ugly death." The demon commander coldly snorted. "Do you think that His Majesty will still trust you like before?" Black Robe calmly replied, "His Majesty has already trusted me for several centuries, and he will trust me for even longer." The demon commander shrilly said, "If His Majesty really is heavily injured, just who do you think can protect your life? Don't forget how many ministers you've executed in Xuelao City over the years, how many elders you've offended. And even if you've rendered a great service to my divine race, you're still a human." Black Robe paid no more attention to him, and continued to walk into the snowstorm. No one knew of this conversation in the snowstorm, and even if they did, it was very normal. To the demon soldiers, it had always been a very common occurrence for a military advisor and a demon commander to be at odds. Yet if one carefully considered it, one could actually realize that this conversation concealed many meanings and was very unusual. After 1,000 years, the demon lord had reappeared in the mortal world. The continent was in turmoil and the atmosphere was extremely tense, and Mount Han, as the source of all this, was even more so. The Heavenstone array had been forcefully broken open by the demon lord. The several thousand Heavenstones returned to their places. The empty spaces in the meadows, cliffs, and lakes were filled once more. The injured were carried to the summit for treatment, the dead were sent back to their hometowns, and the collapsed mountain paths and cliffs began to be repaired. However, the already changed atmosphere could not return to its former tranquility. The stewards of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets and the cultivators participating in the Boiling Stone Summit all had very nervous expressions. Even now, not many people knew what had happened in the last few days or why the supreme experts of the human world had all rushed to Mount Han. The truth was still shrouded in a dense fog, but everyone could sense that something major had happened, because of the heavy security and also because of the oppressive atmosphere coming from the small buildings by the lake. Linghai Jiwang and Mao Chuyu, who had initially been refused entry outside Mount Han by the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets, now appeared on the summit. They stood outside a small building, their complexions abnormally ugly. There were 10 some small buildings by the lake, arranged for the cultivators participating in the Boiling Stone Summit to live in. This small building had the best position, facing the lake and backed by the mountain. It was exceptionally quiet, and the view from it was also the best. But it was obvious that this could not improve the mood of Mao Chuyu and Linghai Jiwang in the slightest, because Chen Chongqing was currently unconscious in the small building. There was another chapter at 8 in the evening. Chapter 574. With some difficulty, he opened his eyes and saw the worried expression on Tang 36's face. Chen Chongqing was not surprised at all, but when he saw that Zheshio's usually indifferent face actually showed some concern, he could not help but be somewhat shocked, and then he had the urge to laugh. His injuries were not light, and his sea of consciousness was shaken. That was why he fainted. It was not because of the injuries caused by colliding with the heavenly stone continent that enveloped Mount Han while using the Thousand-Li button, but because of the Demon Lord's distant finger. At the time, the Demon Lord had been by the stream, far away, and had pointed at him. He used the yellow paper umbrella to block the qi, but he was unable to block the terrifying power contained within the qi. "You woke up so quickly?" Tang 36 saw that he had woken up and was very surprised. He went forward and helped him up. Zheshio said, "You woke up really quickly." Chen Chongqing leaned against the headboard of the bed, looked at the two and said, "Why can't I see any excitement on your faces?" Zheshio ignored him. Tang 36 replied, "The Elder of Heavenly Secrets personally came to see you and confirmed that you were fine, so we have nothing to worry about." Chen Chongqing thought back to the moment when he had just woken up and the worried expressions on the faces of the two. He knew that they were just unwilling to admit it, but he didn't point it out, saying, "Elder Tianji is sure that I'm fine, but does that mean I'm really fine? You should invite Dean Mao over to take a look." Mao Chuyu was now the Archbishop of the Hall of Illustrious Persons, but they were still used to calling him Dean. Tang 36 said, "Elder Tianji can calculate the stars above and the rivers below. He has never been wrong. If he says you are fine, then naturally you are fine." Chen Chongqing was silent for a while and said, "Then did he calculate these things that we encountered?" Following these words, the room became abnormally quiet. Only the faint sound of communication could be heard from afar. They were quiet and silent because they all sensed that the events that took place after entering Mount Han had a strong smell of conspiracy. Even more importantly, it was because they thought of that middle-aged scholar. The image of the middle-aged scholar standing by the stream and looking at the persimmons on the branches had left a deep impression on them. They knew that it would be difficult for them to forget that scene for the rest of their lives. After an unknown amount of time, Tang 36 looked at Chen Chongqing and asked in a low voice, "Are you sure? It's him?" Chen Chongqing didn't say anything and slowly nodded. Tang 36 lowered his head and held his forehead, completely speechless. He was the sole grandson of the Wenshui Tangs. Even the Tianhai clan did not fear him. He truly did not fear the heavens or the earth. The many stories that had occurred in front of the Orthodox Academy in the capital had already proved this point. Yet when he thought of the identity of that middle-aged scholar, even he felt fear from the bottom of his heart. "When I was very young, I had a dream." A voice broke the gloomy atmosphere in the room. Chen Chongqing and Tang 36 looked over. Zheshio expressionlessly looked at the two and continued, "It is to kill him." Chen Chongqing was shocked speechless. Ever since he was young, he had been determined to kill the Demon Lord. This was truly powerful. Tang 36 looked at him and said sincerely, "You are too powerful." "But that's just a dream." Zhishyo recalled the scene he had seen on the mountain path a few days ago, and his face paled. I never imagined that I would be able to see him with my own eyes. Hearing this, Tang 36 was a little angry. He waved his hand to show his disdain, then looked at Chen Chongqing and asked, "How did you survive?" This was what all of Mount Han, even the entire world, wanted to know the most. It was also the most crucial and most incomprehensible aspect of the entire matter. The Demon Lord had not hesitated to be temporarily trapped by the Heavenstone array of Mount Han by the Elder of Heavenly Secrets in order to kill Chen Chongqing. So how had he survived? Through strength, talent, magical artifacts, or willpower? No, it was the Demon Lord. No matter how outstanding Chen Chongqing was in these aspects, he could not rely on them to escape. Hearing Tang 36's question, Zhishyo did not respond. He only took 2 steps closer to the bed, clearly very interested in this answer. Chen Chongqing did not immediately answer this question, instead using his eyes to hint at Tang 36. Tang 36 understood and walked to the door to investigate. Then he took out a magical artifact from his bosom. A faint chi emerged from it, cutting off any possibility of being spied on. "I met a person." Chen Chongqing hesitated, then said, "That person might be Lord Wang." Tang 36 and Zhishyo glanced at each other, seeing the shock in each other's eyes. Especially for Zhishyo, a wolf youth with an unswerving will. Besides the name of the Demon Lord, who else could make him lose control of his emotions? Lord Wang. In this world, there were many people surnamed Wang, and there were also many officials, and there were also many people called Lord Wang. In the past 1,000 years, there was only one person who did not need to add any prefix or explanation. Just by directly addressing someone as Lord Wang, everyone in the world would know who he was. That person was called Wang Jitsa. The room once more became incomparably quiet, and this time, it lasted for even longer. After some time, Tang 36 and Zhishyo finally awoke from their shock. Tang 36 sighed. Lord Wang, as expected, did not die. Chen Chongqing was somewhat surprised. He asked Tang 36, "Are you not surprised?" Tang 36 angrily said, "Zhishyo and I were just like quails, so how else do you want us to be surprised?" "But you just said as expected. Could it be that many people have already guessed that Lord Wang is not dead?" "Of course, the world has always had this saying that Lord Wang is still alive, just living in seclusion. But when I read the history books in the Taoist canon, it's written very clearly that Lord Wang's soul has long since returned to the Sea of Stars. If the words in the history books can be trusted, then even a woman can become an emperor. The Tianhai Empress, this is a metaphor. In short, this has always been one of the 2 great riddles. Many people have always guessed this. 2 great riddles? Chen Chongqing asked in confusion. Tang 36 explained, "It's the final outcome of Zhou Dufu and Lord Wang." Chen Chongqing thought of that empty black sarcophagus in the mausoleum of Zhou and seemed to understand. "Because no one has ever discovered their remains?" Tang 36 replied, "To be more precise, no one even knows if they're dead or not back then, whether it was Emperor Taizong or those legends of the Lingyan Pavilion. When they finally returned to the Sea of Stars, many people saw them with their own eyes. Only these 2 were exceptions." Chen Chongqing thought this over, then said in a very certain tone, "Then, at least one of the riddles has been solved." Tang 36 and Zhishyo once more glanced at each other, asking somewhat uncertainly, "You're sure?" It must be known that this was no ordinary trifling matter. Once the news that Wang Jitsa was still alive spread, it would assuredly shock the entire continent. Chen Chongqing nodded, and then he suddenly thought of something and his expression subtly changed. Chapter 575. What's wrong? Tang 36 asked. In front of the precipice, when Chen Chongqing wanted to confirm whether or not that tourist-like man was the legendary Wang Jitsa, the other had silently smiled and only shook his head. However, The old man with him had very seriously said that this was a secret of the heavens that could not be revealed, or else he would suffer the wrath of the heavens. This matter, it seems like I shouldn't say it. Chen Chongqing turned to Tang 36 and Zhishyo and uneasily said, "You can't tell anyone else." Tang 36 and Zhishyo looked at each other for the third time today. The room fell silent once more. After some time, Tang 36 and Zhishyo nodded their head. Seeing this scene, Chen Chongqing felt relieved. He knew very well that his two friends, as long as they promised something, they would definitely do it. "Your life is truly good." Tang 36 looked at Chen Chongqing and said. His tone was very emotional, and one could even feel a hint of envy. Money could make the gods move. There were very few things in this world that Tang 36 couldn't do, so he rarely envied others. However, Chen Chongqing's luck was enough to make him envious. The legendary Wang Jitsa was actually still alive, and when he reappeared in the world, Chen Chongqing saw him, and it just so happened to be when he was being pursued by the demon lord. At that moment, besides someone like Wang Jitsa who should have never appeared, who could save him? After coming to the capital from Xining, Chen Chongqing had heard far too many evaluations of his good fate. He naturally knew that his fate was not good, but after being praised so many times, he couldn't help but think that perhaps the fortune he had encountered was the starry sky's compensation for his fate? Tang 36 asked in confusion, "Since Lord Wang is still alive, why hasn't he appeared in all these years?" Zhishyo expressionlessly asked, "Why would he appear?" Tang 36 answered, "Whether it's to resist the demons or to strengthen my great Zhou." At this point, he stopped, because he understood the meaning of Zhishyo's words. No one knew what had happened to Wang Jitsa before he disappeared, but the entire continent knew that Emperor Taizong had never liked him. And if he really did appear, how would the great Zhou imperial court treat him? As for resisting the demons, Wang Jitsa had already done too much. The entire human world had no right to demand more from him. How many days was I out? Only now did he remember to ask this question. Tang 36 was still immersed in the shock that Wang Jitsa was still alive and ignored him. Zhishyo extended 5 fingers like a palm. As it turned out, he had already been unconscious for 5 days. It was unknown what had happened in Mount Han during these 5 days. Chen Chongqing asked, "What's new?" Zhishyo thought it over and realized that there was too much to say, so he shook his head and slapped Tang 36 on the back, waking him up. Tang 36 spoke of the tense situation in the continent and the tense atmosphere in Mount Han. Then, will the Boiling Stone Summit continue? Based on Mao Chuyu and Ling Haijiwang's attitude, if you had remained unconscious, they would have brought you back to the capital, and the convention would naturally have ended. But now you're awake. The participants of the Boiling Stone Summit have all arrived? Did you encounter any danger? Tang 36 looked at him meaningfully and said, "Everyone who should be here is here. It's fine." Upon hearing the news that Chen Chongqing had awoken, Mao Chuyu and Ling Haijiwang entered the house to inquire. After confirming that there were no major problems with his body, they withdrew their proposal to return to the capital. Important figures from the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets also came to visit. Their attitudes were very respectful, even overly humble, and they even said that in a few days, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets would personally take care of him, and so on. Chen Chongqing was somewhat confused, thinking, even if I'm the successor to the Pope, there's no need for the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets to be so careful, let alone the fact that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets is the leader of the storms of the 8 directions. What sort of status does he have? And then he thought about how in a few days, could the Elder of Heavenly Secrets have suffered significant injuries when the Demon Lord broke out of the array? As he thought about these questions and even more, time gradually passed and soon it was late at night. The people both inside and outside the house were already asleep. The Orthodoxy cavalry and the experts of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets were vigilantly patrolling nearby. It was quiet all around, and one could clearly hear the lapping of the lake water against the rocks. After waking up, Chen Chongqing asked Tang 36 if everyone participating in the Boiling Stone Summit had arrived and if they had encountered any danger. Tang 36 replied that everyone that should have arrived had arrived. There seemed to be a deeper meaning in his words, but it was because only he knew who Chen Chongqing truly wanted to ask about. When everyone on the summit was asleep, the person that should have arrived had finally arrived. The window was pushed open, allowing the faint and warm lake wind to drift in. At the same time, a graceful figure drifted in. Accompanied by the lake wind, this figure drifted directly to his bed. Sitting down, she softly asked, "How are you?" Chen Chongqing looked at her limpid eyes and saw the concern in her eyes. He suddenly realized that being injured wasn't something hard to accept. "I'm fine, really." The person who had come was naturally Su Yorong. Even though Chen Chongqing said that he was fine, she still did not relax. Closing her eyes, she raised her right hand and aimed it at the space between his eyebrows. A pure and holy light descended and entered Chen Chongqing's body. There were very few people in the world that could use the sacred light technique to such a level. Other than the Pope and the 3 cardinals of the 13 divisions of Radiant Green, she was probably the strongest. Chen Chongqing only felt a cool breeze caress his face and then enter his body. The true essence in his meridians joyfully flowed like a spring stream, his injuries gradually healing. "Thank you." Just who was that person? The previous holy maiden of the south had floated away with Su Li. Now that South Stream Temple was being led by a young girl like Su Yorong, there were some information that could not be known too accurately. "It should have been the Demon Lord," Chen Chongqing replied. The room was very quiet. After a very long time, Su Yorong patted the back of his hand and said, "It's fine as long as you're fine." It was obvious that she had never done anything to comfort anyone before, so both her clapping and her tone of voice seemed rather stiff or clumsy. She did not ask how Chen Chongqing had survived, but Chen Chongqing did not intend to hide it from her, even though he had told Tang 36 and Zhixiu during the day that this matter could not be mentioned. "I might have encountered Lord Wang Jitsa." Upon hearing these words, Su Yorong was truly shocked. That middle-aged scholar had created countless bloody and terrifying scenes by the stream, revealing an incomparably powerful strength. Coupled with the reactions of the experts of the human world, she had long ago basically confirmed that he was the Demon Lord. She just needed Chen Chongqing to give her the final confirmation, but she had not expected that she would learn from Chen Chongqing that Wang Jitsa was still alive. To her, this was even more shocking than the reappearance of the Demon Lord. Wang Jitsa had a very special status in the history of the human world. Back then, when the allied armies of humans and demi-humans fought against the demon cavalry, Emperor Taizong was the commander-in-chief, the leader, while Wang Jitsa was the deputy commander. He personally led the allied armies tens of thousands of li into the snowy plains, pressing straight for Xuelao City. In terms of merit, he was not one whit inferior to Emperor Taizong, and could even be said to be the greatest merit. If not for the coup of the 100 Herb Garden and some other complicated reasons that made Emperor Taizong deeply dislike and fear him, he would definitely have the right to be ranked first in the Lingyan Pavilion. Although this news was very shocking, Su Yorong still very quickly came to her senses and asked, "Why did the Demon Lord want to kill you?" In Tang 36 and Zhixiu's view, how Chen Chongqing had survived the Demon Lord's attack was the most important matter, and they believed that everyone was most concerned about this question. Su Yorong did not think this way. She was much calmer and more clear-headed, so she directly asked about the true crux of the matter. See you tonight. Chapter 576. After losing to Zhou Dufu, the Demon Lord was heavily injured and spent 1,000 years recuperating in Xuelao City. Just what did he want to do by suddenly coming to Mount Han? Just what matter was worth the Demon Lord taking such a massive risk? What did Chen Chongqing have on his body? Or what did his existence signify? This was a matter that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets could not calculate, and Su Yorong could not use the fated star plate to calculate, but she could directly ask. She dared to ask, so Chen Chongqing dared to answer, even though this was his greatest secret. He had no secrets from her, let alone a secret that he had already confessed to her long ago in the mausoleum of Zhou. To be more precise, a part of his secret was currently in her body. Chen Chongqing pointed at his own body. He did not make a sound, only used his mouth to form a word, blood. Su Yorong understood. Coupled with the records of the Demon Lord's injuries in South Stream Temple, she completely understood the origins of this matter. Nank? She also silently asked. Chen Chongqing nodded his head. Su Yorong looked at him, her eyes filled with worry. Now that the Demon Lord knew Chen Chongqing's secret, this also meant that he could move against Chen Chongqing at any time. This was the most terrifying expert of the continent. To be coldly watched by such an expert at all times, what sort of heavy shadow was this? To live under this shadow, what sort of pressure would one have to endure? Su Yorong's Dao heart was brightly lit, but even she found it impossible to imagine how she would respond if she were to face this problem. She was very worried about Chen Chongqing. Even if he did not leave the capital in the future and the orthodoxy protected him, if his mind was restrained, it would still be extremely disadvantageous to his cultivation. Chen Chongqing himself was not worried about this problem, because he had already lived under this shadow for many years. What he was more worried about was whether the secret of his body would be known by even more people. He had never forgotten the words that Senior Yu Ren had said that night. No one could endure this sort of temptation. Su Yorong replied, no. Chen Chongqing thought it over and agreed with her view. The Demon Lord would probably hide this secret. This was like a treasure submerged in a lake. Those who knew of this news would definitely not spread it to the world, but would slowly and stealthily fish it out. Have you ever thought that the Demon Lord's appearance in Mount Han was a scheme? Su Yorong seemed to have thought of something. She looked into his eyes and spoke very seriously. Chen Chongqing, Tang 36, and Zhixiu had speculated about this, but they could not think of any reason, so they shook their heads. Su Yorong looked into his eyes and said, "Where is Din Shang? What did he want to do? What does His Holiness the Pope want to do?" Chen Chongqing didn't want to continue with this question and remained silent. Su Yorong also fell silent. After some time, she suddenly said, "Tell this matter to the Empress." Chen Chongqing looked at her eyes and didn't say anything. Su Yorong calmly stared back at him, showing no intention of yielding. If this is His Holiness the Pope and Principal Shang's scheme, then only the Empress can break it. Chen Chongqing replied without hesitation, "I trust His Holiness the Pope." Su Yorong asked, "Then what about Principal Shang?" Chen Chongqing didn't respond. He got up and poured himself a cup of tea. Su Yorong gazed at his back, a hint of pity flashing through her eyes. "Everyone believes that you are the successor to the orthodoxy and naturally stand against the Empress, but have you ever thought that if you look at it from a different angle, the scenery might be completely different?" Chen Chongqing knew that she was not acting as a lobbyist for the Divine Empress. She was concerned about him, but he could not say anything. Just like the conversation he had with Tang 36 in the Orthodox Academy, every person had their own responsibility. He was a Jianglu. He had been picked up by his master, raised into a man, and educated into a talent. After coming to the capital, he had been cherished and nurtured by Archbishop Meilisha and had been valued by the Pope. He had obtained far too many things from the orthodoxy, so he had to bear the corresponding responsibility. "Moreover, I don't trust the Empress," he said very calmly, his back to Su Yorong as he held the teacup. "Why?" Su Yorong stood up and asked, "Just because the Empress is a woman and not a man?" Chen Chongqing looked at the teacup in his hand and said, "No, it's because she is not a good person. The matter involved the throne of the great Zhou and the inheritance of the orthodoxy. They were talking about important figures who had been in the world for many years, but they were using male and female, good and bad, to talk about it. If other people heard this, they would definitely laugh at the young man and woman talking to each other for being childish, naive, and funny. But they were talking very seriously. Su Yorong knew that Chen Chongqing was this kind of person. She herself was also this kind of person. The room became quiet, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. This was the first time since they met that they had formally discussed this issue. They had never talked about it before because of the word camp. To me, the Empress is like a mother. After some time had passed, Su Yorong's voice rang out once more. It was rather light, but it was very emotional. As for the relationship between the Tianhai Divine Empress and Su Yorong, many people, including Chen Chongqing, felt somewhat confused. Just how did this sort of love and trust come about? Only when the burning heaven sword in Su Li's letter soared into the sky and met the wooden sword Little Phoenix in the night sky of the capital did everyone know the true reason. The Divine Empress also possessed the bloodline of the heavenly phoenix. From this perspective, Su Yorong was her true successor, a successor even more important than her child. But she is not a good person. Chen Chongqing looked into Su Yorong's eyes and calmly yet firmly said, "So I will not trust her." Su Yorong softly asked, "What is the standard for good and evil?" Chen Chongqing replied, "I don't want to argue with you, and the argument that great good is also evil is not something I can grasp. I only know that she has killed many innocent people. Several hundred years ago, when she began to take control of the country, the number of people that had died at the Tianhai Divine Empress's hand was uncountable. There was the Chern imperial clan, the Orthodoxy's conservative faction, corrupt officials, and criminals who had committed all sorts of crimes. But no one could deny that in this process, many people who should not have died had died because of her. Martial Uncle Su has also killed many people. Although he did it unintentionally, the number of innocent people that died under his sword was not small. Intentional or unintentional, in my view, is a very large difference. Then how can you be sure that those innocent people who died were intentional actions of the Empress? Because of Zhou Tong. Chen Chongqing looked into her eyes and said, "Zhou Tong is a pure evil person. He takes pleasure in cruelty, tortures all living beings. From the first day the Empress used this person, it was impossible for her to say that she did not do evil intentionally." After a moment of silence, Su Yorong said, "Do we have to attribute all of Zhou Tong's crimes to the Empress? This is rather unfair." Chen Chongqing replied, "A dog owner does not keep a leash. If a dog bites a person, it is naturally the fault of the owner. If a sharp blade is unsheathed to kill, it is naturally the fault of the person holding the blade." The entire world knew that Zhou Tong was a vicious dog raised by the Divine Empress, a sharp blade. Su Yorong looked into his eyes and said, "You are willing to defend martial Uncle Su, but you are not willing to empathize with the Empress. In the end, you are still prejudiced." Chen Chongqing replied, "I have never seen just how many people Senior Su Li killed in the Longevity Sect and Xuanyang City, but the Empress and Zhou Tong's killings in the capital were all written in books, and I've read those books. I know that those words were all written in blood and are very dazzling." Once more silence, the two of them saying nothing for a very long time. Chapter 577. In the future, if something really does happen to the capital, what will you do? Su Yorong walked to the window, and crossed her arms over her chest. As she gazed at the specks of stars in the lake, her voice became as light as water. Chen Chongqing replied, "I cultivate the Tao of following my heart. If the matter comes, my heart will naturally move." Su Yorong did not turn her head. After a moment of silence, she asked, "If the one who comes is me?" Chen Chongqing very seriously thought this over, but he realized that he could not imagine such a scene, no matter what conclusion he came to. He replied, "I don't know. The Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets had constructed these tensome small buildings by the lake shore with great care, especially the one Chen Chongqing lived in. Opening the window, one could see the lake, and there was a wooden plank outside the window. If one walked down this plank, one could walk into the shallow waters by the lake shore. Under the starlight, several black fish were swimming in the shallow waters. Su Yorong walked down the plank, took off her shoes and socks on the lowest wooden platform, and walked into the clear and shallow waters. Those black fish were not afraid of people at all. Not only did they not flee in fright, they even surrounded her, slowly swimming around her bare, snow-white feet. It was a very beautiful sight. Chen Chongqing gazed at her standing in the lake and felt that her back was rather lonely, and then he became somewhat confused. Logically speaking, she was the holy maiden of the south, so neither the elder of heavenly secrets nor Mao Chuyu should have concealed this matter from her. But why was it that even tonight, she still could not confirm that the middle-aged scholar was the demon lord? The previous conversation had diluted many of her emotions. He did not wish to continue developing like this, so he asked his question. When the demon lord broke out of Mount Han's Heavenstone array, the elder of heavenly secrets was heavily injured and had not yet recovered, so I did not see him. And Principal Mao? He's the Pope's arm, so how could he possibly give me too much convenience? In the end, it was still a problem of alignment. Chen Chongqing thought, as the representative of the orthodoxy's new faction, Linghai Jiwang has assuredly long ago defected to the Divine Empress, so why didn't he tell you? He did not ask this question, but Su Yorong knew what he was thinking. She extended her hand into the lake to play with those small fish, casually saying, "He and Tianhai Chenwu asked Xiaoda to deal with you. I was unhappy, so I ignored him." Hearing that she was unhappy because of this matter, Chen Chongqing was very happy. He also walked down the wooden walkway outside the window, arriving at the shallow waters of the lake. The cool lake water undulated slowly, and the soft silver sand was very comfortable to step on. The Taoist scriptures say that the heaven lake is formed by the gathering of hot springs. Why is this water so cold? The water in the center of the lake is much hotter. I heard that the water from the two hottest springs can cook an egg. It sounds interesting. Do you want to find a chance to give it a try? Just because you can cook eggs? Yes, it's very convenient. Do you know how to cook? Yes. Didn't you eat in the garden of Zhou? Then I'll learn how to cook. The cafeteria of the Tradition Academy is not bad. The chef of Clear Lake Restaurant naturally has extraordinary skills, but I can't always go from South Stream Temple to the capital to eat every day. Did the white crane come this time? Do you want to ask it what it thinks? The white crane has always liked you. If it knows that you have such thoughts, it will definitely change its mind. I'm just saying. You're just saying. I'm serious. He and she stood side by side in the lake under the small building, gazing at the numerous stars in the night sky. They casually chatted, and then gradually, their voices fell silent. They were quiet for a very long time, neither of them speaking. Unlike the silence in the room before, this silence was beautiful, because his shoulder was gently leaning against hers. Sometimes, when they parted slightly, they would immediately lean back against each other. It was hard to say who would go and who would have to go. After some time, probably because they were tired from standing, the two sat down on the lowest wooden platform. Su Yorong took out a small cloth bag from her sleeve, and took something out of it. Chen Chongqing did not notice. He pointed at a pitch-black stone in the lake and asked, "Is that the heaven stone?" Su Yorong's voice was somewhat unclear. "Yes." Chen Chongqing turned to her and asked, "How did you comprehend those stones?" They also had stones, and they were much more important than the heaven stones in Mount Han, because those stones were heavenly tome monolith. He had not come to the boiling stone summit to comprehend the heaven stones to advance, but to see her. But who could have expected that after a peaceful and uneventful journey of 10,000 li, upon entering Mount Han, they would encounter such a major event? There's been no progress at the moment. Let's take it slowly. Su Yorong slightly leaned back, her hands propping up the wooden platform. Her bare feet lightly patted the surface of the lake, making her seem very cute. I was a little anxious after meeting the Demon Lord. When he thought of the bloody sight he had seen on the mountain path, Chen Chongqing felt a tinge of fear in his heart. Su Yorong understood what he was feeling and said, "Meeting such a peerless expert and being able to survive will always have its benefits." Chen Chongqing grunted, then said, "It's just that I didn't expect the Demon Lord to be so terrifying. The difference is too great." Back in Xuanyang City, Zhu Luo's attacks had basically all been blocked by Wang Pu. But this time, when confronting the Demon Lord in Mount Han, Lu Qing and Xiao De were practically powerless to resist. Su Yorong replied, "The Demon Lord is naturally much stronger than Zhu Luo, but there's another important point. Wang Pu is also much stronger than Lu Qing and Xiao De." Chen Chongqing was confused, thinking Lu Qing is a peak star condensation assassin and Xiao De is an expert in the top 5 of the Proclamation of Liberation. Although Wang Pu is at the top of the Proclamation of Liberation, how can he be said to be much stronger? Wang Pu is an extraordinary person. He can't be understood using common sense, Su Yorong seriously said. Chen Chongqing could not rationally accept that Wang Pu was stronger than Lu Qing and Xiao De working together, but he was very willing to accept it emotionally. Besides the Demon Lord, what other formidable people are there on the side of the demons? I hear that the demon commander is very strong, and then there are those demon generals. You should have seen them on the snowy plains. Chen Chongqing recalled that distant mountainous shadow he had seen on the snowy plains of the land of demons and subconsciously shook his head. With his current level of strength, he was still far from being able to fight against these powerful foes. Without leaving the capital, it's truly very difficult to discover that there are so many formidable people in the world. You're also very formidable. At the very least, when the Demon Lord was your age, he definitely couldn't beat you. I feel that these words can also be used to describe you. That's exactly what I meant. What's wrong? It's nothing. Chen Chongqing really wanted to say, "Your voice is very pleasant to listen to, sweet and sticky, like you're holding a candied date in your mouth." Note 1. With a squelch, Su Yorong spat something into the lake. This thing slowly sank into the water, attracting the little black fish to peck at it. The lake water was very clear. Chen Chongqing carefully looked at it and realized that what she had spat out was a date pit. The little black fish realized that it was not food and swam away in boredom. Su Yorong found this very amusing. Crossing her feet, she happily laughed. Chen Chongqing couldn't help but scratch his head at this sight. Only then did Su Yorong come to her senses. This was not the deserted and serene peak, nor was it the mahjong table in a small village. Sitting at her side was a young man. Her face somewhat hot, she subconsciously took out a silk pouch filled with snacks from her sleeve and offered it to him, softly asking, "Do you want to eat?" There was no date pit in her mouth, but her voice was still sticky because she was somewhat embarrassed. She lowered her head, not even looking at Chen Chongqing. Chen Chongqing looked at her long eyelashes, her white and tender skin, and her rosy lips. For a moment, he was somewhat dumbfounded. He thought to himself, "Why can I only think of such tedious adjectives?" Note 2. He took the silk pouch from her hand and took out a snack. Without even looking at what it was, he tossed it into his mouth. "What's wrong?" Su Yorong raised her head and glanced at him. Chen Chongqing was a very honest person. He looked at her seriously and said, "You're really pretty." Su Yorong was slightly embarrassed and lowered her head. After a while, she raised her head again and asked, "Am I pretty now, or am I pretty in the garden of Zhou?" Just like all young girls, even if she was the holy maiden, at this sort of moment, she would always ask a few stupid questions. Of course, the stupidity here referred to her asking this question, but it did not mean that the question itself was very easy to answer. When Su Yorong entered the garden of Zhou, she had used the identity of a disciple of the 13 divisions of Radiant Green. She had disguised herself, so her appearance was only ordinary. The current her was publicly acknowledged as the most beautiful girl in the world. But if Chen Chongqing were to very honestly say that the current her was even prettier, then he would definitely be wrong. In reality, this was just like the eternal problem of the fallen river. It was very difficult to answer, and it concealed even more complicated trials and dangers. This problem simply did not have a correct answer. Whether or not Chen Chongqing's answer satisfied her completely depended on her current mood. Chen Chongqing was not skilled at lying. What was amazing was that he had once very seriously pondered this problem and had long since reached a conclusion. They're all very pretty, but different kinds of pretty. He looked at Su Yorong and said very seriously. These were his words from the bottom of his heart, the truth. Su Yorong was very happy to hear this. He saw that she was happy and was also very happy. If they could always sit like this, with a lake in front of them, a mountain behind them, and a brilliant starry sky above them. You're right by my side. But, can we always be together? A layer of cloud floated over from some unknown place, obscuring a certain star region in the southern sky and casting a shadow over the lake. A shadow also appeared in Chen Chongqing's heart. There's something I've been hiding from you. You said it before. Did I? Yes. I forgot. Do you want to know? Everyone should have their own secret. I also have mine, and I don't want you to know my secret, so... Oh, I suddenly realize that I really want to tell you that secret. Just because you want to know my secret? Yes. Chen Chongqing, you're not a common woman. Why are you so interested in peeking into other people's secrets? Maybe it's because I cultivate to follow my heart? A man and a woman passionately in love, even if they repeated the same words 300 times, they would not feel bored. Because for them, the words themselves were not important, the important thing was to talk to the other person. However, for those listeners, to listen to the same words so many times was indeed an extremely difficult thing to bear. The sweeter the words, the more difficult it was. Tang 36 felt very uncomfortable at this moment. He felt that he ate too much tonight and wanted to vomit. There was only one path on the side of the small building against the mountain. At this moment, he was sitting cross-legged there with the one shui sword across his knees and a wild grass in his mouth. His face was full of grief and indignation. He thought to himself, what a pair of adulterers. Note 1. I forgot which novel I read this description in. I think it's very good, but I forgot where it came from. Note 2. Boring description, this is mainly talking about me. Note 3. I don't know if Tang 36 will feel bored or not. I'm really worried that everyone will feel bored, but I really like to write romance. The small building with white sand is obviously Maldives. Of course, the date is referring to the honeymoon. Let's be sweet, see everyone tomorrow. Chapter 578. When he woke up the next morning, Tang 36 went to find Chen Chongqing with 2 dark circles under his eyes. What happened to you? Chen Chongqing was very concerned about his health. Tang 36 was very tired and said, being a lookout is very tiring. Can you guys sleep earlier in the future? Chen Chongqing heard this and felt a little embarrassed and guilty. Just a few days. A few days? Tang 36 raised his voice and shouted angrily, when we were in the capital, you also said a few days. Now it's still a few days. Then tell me, how many days is a few days? How many days is it? How long are you going to hide this? Chen Chongqing was speechless. Tang 36 looked at him and said bitterly, I beg you, hurry up and tell the world. It's too hard to keep a secret. Chen Chongqing comforted him. I also feel the same way, but... Hearing the words, feel the same way, Tang 36 suddenly became angry and shouted, What? Feel the same way? Feel your mother's feeling. Feel your mother's feeling. This is your own business. It's none of my business. You get all the benefits. The snow of the Tradition Academy, the wind on the top of the cold mountain, you let me take it. If you can, then give me that date. Chen Chongsheng was originally ashamed of what he said, but when he heard the word date, he immediately became alert. He stared at him and said, "What did you say?" Tang 36 just realized that he let it slip, but he didn't want to admit defeat. "What? Can't I get some benefits for being a lookout?" Chen Chongsheng was helpless and said, "Didn't we agree before, don't listen to indecent things, don't look at indecent things?" Tang 36 pretended to be shocked and said, "You molested her?" At this moment, Zhishio walked in and looked at the two people who were at each other's throat. He asked, "You want to fight?" "Nope." Tang 36 used a ladder to get down and said, "I asked him to help me find out where my idol went, but he just wouldn't let me know." The idol he was talking about was Lu Qing. With the departure of Su Li and the mysterious her, the former third assassin in the world should be ranked first on the ranking of assassins. But even if the chief assassin was still an assassin, the top assassin was still an assassin, and the top assassin was still an assassin. Just as Zhishio had said, an assassin participating in the Boiling Stone Summit was seeking death. Chen Chongsheng had once asked the steward of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets to look after him. Not long after that steward agreed, he was turned into a pile of blood pearls by the Demon Lord. When they thought about how Lu Qing had been heavily injured by the Demon Lord and how special his status was, the three of them couldn't help but worry. On an island in the Heaven Lake, a hot mist pervaded the surroundings of the garden, not dispersing all year round. Living here wasn't necessarily comfortable, but it was very helpful for healing injuries. Especially after being injured by the extremely cold demonic technique, this place could allow one to recover the fastest. Lu Qing was currently recuperating on the island. He did not need Chen Chongsheng and the other two to worry, nor did he need them to beg the Pavilion of Divination to let him go. The assassin list was issued by the Pavilion of Heavenly Secret. Very few people noticed the hidden meaning behind this fact. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets sat across from Lu Qing and asked, "With Su Li gone, what do you plan to do next?" Lu Qing was not a member of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets, but he had done many things for the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets. In truth, even Su Li had done many things for the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets. Lu Qing thought it over, then said, "If Sir does not object, I want to go to the capital." "To do what in the capital?" "To kill Tianhai." "Then, I object." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets calmly said to him, "The Empress is my good friend, and I don't want you to throw away your life." Lu Qing replied, "Then let's talk about it later." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets suddenly asked, "Chen Chongsheng, just what sort of person is he?" Lu Qing very seriously pondered this question for a very long time, finally saying, "He is a good person." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets slightly arched his brows, rather surprised by this answer. Whether it was Su Li, Lu Qing, or he, none of them were good people. What they loathed the most, or rather, disdained the so-called good people. But when Lu Qing said that Chen Chongsheng was a good person, he did not see any ridicule on Lu Qing's face, only seriousness and respect. This answer was very important to the Elder of Heavenly Secret. Since he is a little fellow who has good intentions towards the world, then I will represent this world in returning his good intentions. When did Sir ever have such a thing as good intentions? When a person is about to die, his words are good, so what are his intentions? The light boat floated on the surface of the lake, breaking through the mist as if it was traversing a fairyland. Chen Chongsheng could clearly sense that there were defensive arrays in the mist and in the water. As he passed the small island in the middle of the lake, he could see the disciples of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets bowing. It didn't take long before he arrived at the island in the middle of the lake. It was also the warmest, perhaps even the hottest place in this frigid mountain range. As he walked through the mist and stepped on the somewhat slippery stone slabs, a few questions surged in his mind. Why was the Elder of Heavenly Secrets in such a rush to see him? Putting aside the fact that he had just woken up from his coma, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had probably also suffered significant injuries. As he thought of these things, he gradually forgot about the stifling heat around him. When he arrived in the garden and saw the Elder of Heavenly Secrets, he finally understood something. Although he still did not have an answer, he already had a clue. Last summer, in the Orthodox Academy, the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets had sent an old steward to inspect the stainless sword. It turned out that the old steward was the Elder of Heavenly Secrets himself. This meant that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had naturally not gone to inspect the sword, but to inspect the person, to inspect Chen Chongsheng. The steward responsible for leading the way from the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets respectfully led Chen Chongsheng to his seat and then silently withdrew. Chen Chongsheng calmly sat, like a junior listening attentively to a lecture. If this were 2 years ago, he would have found it impossible to remain so calm upon meeting an important figure like the Elder of Heavenly Secrets. But now, he had already seen far too many legendary figures, even legends like the Demon Lord and Wang Jitsa. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets noticed that even though he had just passed through the stifling heat of the mist, Chen Chongsheng's collar was still tightly buttoned and his clothes were meticulous. He was very satisfied with this. "I've seen countless heroes, and you are not inferior to any one of them." Without any pleasantries or probing, the most senior figure on the continent began his conversation. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets looked at Chen Chongsheng and said, "I've also seen countless mountains, but my favorite has always been that Mount Langya on the shore of the Eastern Sea. And that mountain was the reward the Divine Empress gave me when I went to the capital to see you." Only now did Chen Chongsheng realize that there were some transactions hidden behind this matter, and he was very shocked. The entire world knew that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets possessed an unimaginably supreme intelligence and a world-shaking ability to calculate and calculate. In the view of many people, if there really was a person that could see through fate, then that person had to be the Elder of Heavenly Secret. The Divine Empress had asked the Elder of Heavenly Secrets to take a look at him, and had gifted him a famed mountain. This price could not be considered small. He naturally wanted to know just what secrets the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had seen on his body. But even if he was the future Pope, he was still a junior in front of the Elder of Heavenly Secrets. The tempo of the conversation was not under his control. He had many things he wanted to ask the Elder of Heavenly Secrets, and the Elder of Heavenly Secrets also had many questions he wanted to ask him. Since the Demon Lord did not leave at the start, why did he leave later on? The Elder of Heavenly Secrets asked. After Chen Chongsheng woke up, Tang 36 and Zhishio were also most concerned about this question, because his survival was an extremely inconceivable matter. Even if the Elder of Heavenly Secrets could calculate everything in the world, he still could not calculate just how he had survived. This was because he could not calculate that Wang Jitsa was still alive and that at that moment, Wang Jitsa had appeared in Mount Han, in front of that precipice. Chen Chongsheng had promised the old man that he would not speak of this matter. Tang 36 and Zhishio were unexpected, but Su Yorong was an exception. Although the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had an exalted status and extremely high seniority, this was not an accident, nor was it an exception. As a result, he said nothing, only shook his head. This was a very direct attitude. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets did not get angry, only calmly gazed at him, a pensive expression on his face. His eyes were calm and brimming with insight, as if they could see through all secrets. "You don't want to tell me how you survived, so can you tell me why the Demon Lord came to kill you?" Chen Chongsheng thought to himself, "The Demon Lord did not come to kill me," and then he once more shook his head. This was still a very direct attitude. He did not want to discuss this matter, because it involved his greatest secret and fear. "Perhaps you do not know what happened afterwards. When the Demon Lord returned to Xuelao City, he was already heavily injured. At this point, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets paused, as if giving him some time to accept and digest his shock. Chen Chongqing was truly shocked. The Demon Lord was heavily injured? And after he broke through the Heavenstone array of Mount Han, just what sort of situation did he encounter? He encountered His Majesty the White Emperor. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets did not give him too much time to guess, straightforwardly saying, or to put it more accurately, His Majesty the White Emperor was waiting for him in the snowy plains. Hearing this, Chen Chongqing's heart gradually sank. Even in the garden at the center of the island that was as warm as spring, he still felt a sliver of cold. It seems that the Demon Lord leaving Shualao City and coming to Mount Han to kill you was already calculated by someone. He fell into the trap. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets calmly gazed into his eyes. Only, I did not know of this trap, nor did the Empress. Then, did you know? Chen Chongqing's mind was somewhat absent-minded. Hearing these words, he subconsciously shook his head. This was the third time he had shaken his head since the conversation began, but it was completely different from the previous 2 times. He was somewhat perplexed, somewhat uneasy, somewhat unwilling to continue thinking about it. Yet the Elder of Heavenly Secrets continued to stare into his eyes, his voice still continuing. Since this was a trap, the person who said it should have been well aware that you have something on your body that the Demon Lord had to obtain even if it meant taking enormous risk. Just what do you have on your body? How many people in the world know of this matter? You can choose not to answer, but I recommend that you carefully think about it for yourself. Chen Chongqing lowered his head, remaining silent for a very long time. Embarking on the long and arduous journey of 3,000 kilometers, yes, I have to detour to the west to pay my respects to my father-in-law. How cool. I will balance the journey with work and rest. If I don't have the strength to write, I will not hesitate to ask everyone for leave. Relax. Chapter 579. Only a few people know the secret of his blood. In the Garden of Zhou, the demon general couple and the shaman elder had both died. Monsters could not communicate with humans, and after Nank told her father, she would definitely keep the secret. Yorong obviously would not tell anyone else, so that left only her master and senior Yuren. Last night, Su Yorong had already reminded him, but he didn't want to or didn't dare to think about it, so he didn't answer her. But regardless of whether it was him or Su Yorong, they were both very clear that the question still existed. It was not something that could be ignored just because they did not answer it. Today, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had directly torn apart the paper window, forcing him to face this question and obtain his own answer. If this really was a plot to assassinate the Demon Lord, was it really arranged by teacher and senior Yuren? Chen Chongqing suddenly raised his head, looked at the Elder of Heavenly Secrets and asked, "What was the final result?" The Elder of Heavenly Secrets slightly raised his eyebrows. He had not expected that this youth would be able to calm down in such a short amount of time. As I said, when the Demon Lord returned to Shualao City, he was heavily injured. I mean both sides. His Majesty the White Emperor has also suffered significant injuries and will need several years to recuperate, but the Demon Lord's injuries are even more severe. Based on what I know, in Shualao City, the Demon Commander and Black Robe have always been at odds with each other like fire and water, but they were forcefully suppressed by the Demon Lord. Now that the Demon Lord is heavily injured, doesn't this mean that his control over the entire demon domain, especially over those two, has weakened? You could say that. Whether it's the Divine Empress, His Holiness the Pope, or Senior, what they're most worried about is the demons disrupting the confluence of the north and south, right? Not bad. If the interior is unstable, it will be very difficult for the demons to divert their attention to destroy the confluence of the north and south. That makes sense. The human race and the demon race will have precious time to regroup, and the situation of the entire continent will be in our favor? Yes. After this conversation, the garden became quiet again. After a long time, Chen Chongqing said, "That's enough." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets slightly raised his brows, asking, "Enough?" "Yes, I might have been bait and almost died, but if I can get so many benefits, then it's enough." Chen Chongqing looked at the Elder of Heavenly Secrets and said seriously. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets looked into his eyes and saw no hypocrisy, no reluctance, only sincerity. "Even if you're being used?" "Yes, even if I'm being used." "Don't tell me you don't feel angry because of this?" the Elder of Heavenly Secrets asked. Chen Chongqing thought for a while and said, "Yes, I am very angry or sad. I will find a chance to ask him face to face." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets understood his meaning and knew that he would not reveal the name of the one who set this trap. He said, "Every person has their own choice. I only hope that you will not regret it." Chen Chongqing said, "Actually, I still don't understand why you always want me to make a choice." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets thrust his hand into the fog and, like a magic trick, produced a basket of peaches. The peaches were plump, pink and tender, looking extremely tempting. He took out a peach from the basket and handed it to Chen Chongqing, along with a small knife. Chen Chongqing very naturally took the knife and began to carefully peel the skin. Peeling the peach made no sound and the garden was very quiet. After a short while, he had finished peeling a peach and politely offered it to the Elder of Heavenly Secret. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets shook his head and indifferently said, "To eat a peach, to peel or not to peel, this is a choice." Chen Chongqing's hand holding the peach froze in midair. "If I were eating a peach myself, I wouldn't peel it because the skin is nutritious, but I was thinking of Sir eating it. Old people have difficulty digesting, so peeling is more suitable." This was his explanation. To the Elder of Heavenly Secrets, this was meaningless. No matter who it is directed at, no matter what the final choice is, in the end, you have made a choice. So, sweet or salty, peeling or not peeling, survival or death, these have always been questions. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets looked into his eyes and calmly said, "Life is made up of countless multiple-choice questions. Who can completely avoid them?" Chen Chongqing asked, "If no matter what choice we make, it is not in accordance with our hearts, then what should we do?" At the time when the Demon Lord blocked your path on the mountain path, as the Master of Mount Han, I could have made two different responses, but whether it was activating the Heavenstone Array and simultaneously trapping him and all of you in Mount Han, forcing you into desperate straits, or ignoring the Demon Lord and saving you first, to me, neither was a perfect solution. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets continued, "When I made my final choice, I still relied on my own heart." Chen Chongqing asked, "Not in accordance with your heart, but in the end, you still acted according to your heart?" The Elder of Heavenly Secrets replied, "When the vault of the heavens shatters and the stars fall, it is simply impossible for you to make a rational judgment. You can only act according to your heart at that moment, that is your true heart." Chen Chongqing fell silent for a very long time, then said, "I understand. Every person will face their own multiple-choice question and give their own answer. My choice to activate the Heavenstone Array and have you, Tang Tang, and the others die together with the Demon Lord was my heart. Although this is unfair to you all, I do not feel ashamed, and I believe that no one will blame me, because the Demon Lord's life is more important than all of you combined. I don't have too many complaints about this. Even to the one who set this trap? I just feel that they should have told me beforehand, or perhaps this would have made me feel better, not like I was purely being used. Every person can only take responsibility for their own choices. I do not care about what the one who set this trap was thinking, but for you, I want to make some compensation." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets calmly said to him, "I advise you to grasp this opportunity." Hearing these words, Chen Chongqing was somewhat shocked, and also somewhat perplexed. With the Elder of Heavenly Secrets' status in the continent, these words of his were an enormous temptation to any cultivator. Whether it was gold, silver, treasures, secret cultivation manuals, divine weapons, or even famous mountains and great rivers, the pavilion of heavenly secrets could produce them all. However, Chen Chongqing did not lack for these things. He had the having blade style, the secrets of the mountly sword style, his status as successor to the Pope, the heavenly tome monoliths, and Tang 36. What could the Elder of Heavenly Secrets give him? Or perhaps, what was the most extraordinary aspect of the Elder of Heavenly Secrets? It was his wisdom, his experience, his understanding of the world, and his countless secrets that were unknown to others. I would like to ask Sir a few questions. Chen Chongqing made up his mind and looked at the Elder of Heavenly Secrets. This answer was clearly within the expectations of the Elder of Heavenly Secrets. He faintly smiled, the wrinkles on his face deepening. Who am I? This was Chen Chongqing's first question. This was also the third to last question of the essay on the origin of the Tao. This was the answer that countless experts and masters, after cultivating to the peak, had sought in a daze. This was one of the most famous questions in the 10 debates between the Pope and the grand scholar of the demon race, Tungus. This was a metaphysical question, a philosophical question. This question had already entered the domain of the Tao. But the Elder of Heavenly Secrets understood that Chen Chongqing's question was not so particular. It was very direct, very simple. He just wanted to know, just who am I? Chapter 580. Who was Chen Chongqing? He was Jiang Luer that Taoist Ji had picked up from the stream. He was the young Taoist from Xining who was engaged to the heavenly phoenix Su Yorong. He was the successor to the orthodoxy, the successor to the Pope. He was well versed in the Taoist canon, had outstanding talent, and was a genius of the sword. But just who was he? He looked into the eyes of the Elder of Heavenly Secrets and very seriously asked, "Am I Crown Prince Xiaoming?" This was one of the most sensational and most secretive rumors in the capital in the past year. No one knew the answer. Everyone said that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets was omniscient, so did he know? This question was simple and direct, abnormally stern, just like Su Li's sword or Wang Po's blade. Even though the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had mentally prepared himself for this, he still narrowed his eyes and fell silent for a very long time. After some time, he finally spoke. "The Empress had me make a special trip to the capital to see you." In truth, she also wanted to ask the same question. Chen Chongqing thought to himself that this was also the question he wanted to know the most. The result? The Elder of Heavenly Secrets replied, "There was no result, because your and Crown Prince Xiaoming's ages do not match." Chen Chongqing did not relax because of this answer, for 2 reasons. He had carefully calculated. Although his and Crown Prince Xiaoming's ages did not match, Senior Yurin just so happened to match. Moreover, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets' words contained a deeper meaning. Because their ages did not match, there was no result. Did this mean that as long as their ages matched in every aspect, he should be Crown Prince Xiaoming? If you really did match Crown Prince Xiaoming's age, then this matter would instead be wrong. Why? Because it was too correct. Because it was too correct, it was wrong. This sounded rather mysterious, but Chen Chongqing easily understood. If his age matched up with Crown Prince Xiaoming's, then the rumors in the capital could very easily come true. Those storms hidden in the shadows were bound to burst open, perhaps tearing apart the black curtain of the capital, or perhaps blowing him to smithereens. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets' next words startled Chen Chongqing out of his reverie, and his body went somewhat stiff. "I know that you have a senior brother. His age matches Crown Prince Xiaoming's." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets looked into his eyes and said, "There's no need to be nervous. I'm not saying that he's Crown Prince Xiaoming." Chen Chongqing asked, "Why?" The Elder of Heavenly Secrets replied, "Because he and Crown Prince Xiaoming are completely compatible." Chen Chongqing didn't know what to say. "I've always admired Dean Shang's myriad of Taoist techniques." With a calm expression, the elder of heavenly secrets said, when the false becomes the true becomes the false. Alas, it cannot deceive me. Chen Chongqing didn't ask why he couldn't hide it from him. At this moment, his mind was completely elsewhere. He recalled a Taoist scripture called the Scripture of Time. Time was age. Could it be that besides age, I can match Crown Prince Xiaoming in every other aspect? Yes, I'm very sure that you're the descendant of the Chen imperial family. Hearing this, Chen Chongqing could no longer remain calm. In the rumors that had been circulating in the capital for many years, before saying that he was Crown Prince Xiaoming, they would naturally first mention that he was a member of the imperial clan. Why is everyone so sure that I'm royalty? Is it because my surname is Chen? He asked the elder of heavenly secrets, not realizing that his voice was rather high compared to normal. This sort of agitated state of mind was a very rare occurrence for him. The garden was shrouded in a thick fog, tightly isolating his conversation with the elder of heavenly secrets. No one would be able to hear it. How can I be sure that you're royalty? The elder of heavenly secrets looked at him, the emotions in his eyes rather complex. Because your body once had a sun wheel. Sun wheel. Chen Chongqing was not unfamiliar with this term, though ever since the Tianhai Divine Empress reigned and all the members of the imperial clan were sent out of the capital, very few people would mention this term. When the Chen imperial clan emerged from Tianliang County and pacified the world, they successively produced peerless experts like Chen Xuanba and Emperor Taizong precisely because the talent of the Chen clan's bloodline had always been different. Their cultivation was different from that of other sects, and the specific differences were naturally the greatest secret of the imperial clan, but the two words sun wheel had still been passed down. Chen Chongqing thought back to his cultivation process from Xining to the capital, especially his countless times of meditative introspection. He shook his head. No, I didn't discover any sun wheel in my body. That's because the sun wheel in your body was destroyed a long time ago. To put it more accurately, it exploded. The elder of heavenly secrets calmly gazed at him. Perhaps he was mistaken, but Chen Chongqing felt that the other's eyes carried a hint of pity. How is this possible? If it really is as Sir says, that my body once had a sun wheel and then exploded, why did I not feel anything? That's because when the sun wheel in your body was destroyed, you were still an infant. But even so, why has no one ever discovered the traces of a sun wheel in my body? Why did Sir not discover it when you went to see me in the capital last time? Chen Chongqing still found it impossible to accept this reasoning, even if the speaker was the elder of heavenly secrets. Because at the time, your cultivation level was not high enough. As your cultivation gradually deepened and starlight entered your body, the image of your meridians became even clearer, allowing me to finally confirm it. Weren't we talking about the explosion of the sun wheel? Why did you mention meridians? Did your meridians rupture and you always had problems with the circulation of true essence? The elder of heavenly secrets looked into his eyes and asked. Chen Chongqing was shocked speechless. Just like blood, the blocked or ruptured meridians were also the greatest secret of his body. This secret was even more terrifying, because according to his master, the problem with his meridians would cause him to die at the age of 20. He had not expected that this secret would be so easily seen through by the elder of heavenly secrets and then spoken of. But, what did ruptured meridians have to do with him being of the imperial clan? What did it have to do with the sun wheel? The elder of heavenly secrets raised his right hand and pointed across the table at a certain place on Chen Chongqing's chest. When you were an infant, the sun wheel exploded here and then spread out like a spider's web, severing your 9 meridians. You want to ask what the connection is between the ruptured meridians and the explosion of the sun wheel. Your ruptured meridians are the traces of the explosion of the sun wheel, the most direct evidence. Of the countless people in the world, only you have these signs of ruptured meridians. So you are of the Chern imperial clan. Of course, you are an extremely unfortunate member of the imperial clan. Logically speaking, the moment the sun wheel exploded, the infant you should have already died. But you survived. This in itself is already a kind of miracle. The garden fell into silence. The fog became abnormally dense. The garden that had been as warm as spring suddenly became as cold as the harsh winter. Chen Chongqing said nothing for a very long time. Only after a very long time did he look at the Elder of Heavenly Secrets and ask, "But I will still die, right?" This time, it was the Elder of Heavenly Secrets who was silent. Chapter 581. The thousands of strands of wind on the surface of the lake somehow managed to pass through the formation and reach the field. It scattered the fog and lowered the temperature. That was how the two of them felt. My medical skills are not as good as Shang's or Yin's. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets looked at him and said, "If the two of them don't have any ideas, I also don't know what to do." Chen Chongqing gazed into the distance. On the other side of the mist that had been blown away, he could faintly see the dark blue lake. It was very beautiful. However, according to my speculation, since your problem lies in the blockage of your meridians caused by the explosion of your sun chakra when you were a baby, if you don't try to cultivate and even directly disperse the true essence in your body, you might be able to barely maintain your original state. At the very least, you might be able to delay the outbreak of your injuries. Upon hearing the words of the Elder of Heavenly Secrets, Chen Chongqing retracted his gaze and asked, "Senior, how confident are you?" Regarding this matter, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had been calculating for a very long time while he was unconscious. He directly said, 20%. 20%. This was a rather awkward number. It could be said that there was hope, but it was a little uncertain. It could be said that there was despair, but it was clear that there was a path ahead. Today, Chen Chongqing learned many things about himself, but at the end of the road ahead, there was still a large shadow. If it had been anyone else, after going back and forth between hope and despair so many times, their spirit would have long since been on the verge of collapse, but he didn't. He even quickly got rid of his previous emotions and regained his true calmness. Tianji Lauren's expression did not change, but great waves were already surging in his heart. With this child's temperament, if not for the heavens not faking his fate, how could he not have obtained the great Tao? Chen Chongqing's willpower was truly terrifying. He recovered his calmness at an unimaginable speed, even forgetting the previous conversation. Then, he asked a very naive question. "Senior, which side are you on?" If anyone else were to ask the Elder of Heavenly Secrets this question, they would assuredly suffer a miserable fate. However, Chen Chongqing's identity was very special, whether it was his relationship with the Pope, Shang, or the possible relationship with the Divine Empress. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets actually replied in full detail. "My relationship with the Li Palace has always been good, but my relationship with Yin is not good. My relationship with your Zhou Empire is not good, but my relationship with the Empress is good." Then, if I really am Crown Prince Xiaoming, will the Divine Empress kill me? Chen Chongqing's next question was not only naive and childish, it was even a bit excessive. What was even more outrageous was that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets really did answer once more. "Based on my understanding of her ladyship, she will eventually. She has been waiting for 2 years, but she can't wait forever." "Why? Have you heard of the legend of defying the heavens and changing fate?" "I always thought it was just a rumor." Rumors often come from the truth, and sometimes the truth is even more bizarre than the rumors. Chen Chongqing was silent. There had always been a certain saying on the continent. Several hundred years ago, the Divine Empress was expelled from the imperial palace by Emperor Taizong. In the 100 Herb Garden, she met 2 friends and learned of the secret of defying the heavens and changing fate. Those 2 friends were the current Pope and his master, the former principal of the Orthodox Academy, Shang Xingzhou. The divine empress swore to the starry sky that she was willing to sever her bloodline in exchange for this peerless achievement. "The bloodline has been severed," he muttered. The elder of heavenly secrets looked into his eyes and serenely said, "This fellow, fate, has never made a one-time deal. There is no such thing as an end to defying the heavens and changing one's fate. From offering sacrifices to the starry sky to returning to the sea of stars, it is ongoing at all times. If the Empress wants to succeed in defying the heavens and changing her fate, she cannot have any descendants. And if she does? If she does, then it is a gap in her fate, her greatest weakness. But if I really am Crown Prince Xiaoming, then the Empress, she is my mother." When Chen Chongqing thought of this problem, his emotions became uncontrollably complex. The elder of heavenly secrets had a very calm expression, even somewhat callous. "The Empress once had many children, but they are all dead." Chen Chongqing asked, "And Princess Ping?" The elder of heavenly secrets replied, "Quite a few people, including me, know that Princess Ping is not the Empress's biological daughter, but she herself does not know." Upon hearing this news, Chen Chongqing was shocked speechless. Then, he realized that many things that he did not understand before were now answered. For example, the divine Empress doted on Princess Ping, but her education was very problematic. For example, when Princess Ping wanted to compete with Su Yurong for favor, she would always lose. If the Empress has any descendant in this world, it can only be Su Yurong. The elder of heavenly secrets seemed to know what he was thinking and said, "Even though this is a spiritual and bloodline inheritance." Chen Chongqing fell silent for a very long time, then asked, "Since Sir has a good relationship with the Empress, why are you telling me these secrets?" The elder of heavenly secrets replied, "Because I hope to help you make the correct choice." As he said this, he glanced at the peach in Chen Chongqing's hand. The peach had already been peeled for a very long time. The color of the flesh had not changed, but it felt like it was no longer fresh. After a moment of silence, Chen Chongqing asked, "What can I choose?" The elder of heavenly secrets replied, "You can pretend to know nothing, return to the capital, and then be executed by the Empress, or you can choose to leave and conceal your identity, never to be seen again." Chen Chongqing raised his head and looked at him, asking, "But why is it up to me to choose?" "Because I do not wish for the Empress to once again face such a difficult choice." The elder of heavenly secrets was deeply moved. "From the moment you entered the capital, she has always been hesitating, otherwise you would have long since died, a tiger eating its own child. What a tragedy." Chen Chongqing's nose twitched and his breathing became rather coarse. Only those who were most familiar with him knew that this was a sign that he was in an extremely bad mood. In this past year, he had very rarely displayed this sort of behavior. So Lulu knew, Tang 36 knew, but not even Su Yurong knew. Then what about the children eaten by the tiger? What about the children eaten by the tiger? Aren't they even more sorrowful and miserable? He stared into the elder of heavenly secrets' eyes and said, "And I might not be crowned Prince Xiaoming. Even if I am, it shouldn't be up to me to make the choice. It should be her. Sir wants me to conceal my identity, never to be seen, so why can't she pretend to know nothing and do nothing?" The elder of heavenly secrets replied, "Because you have already appeared in the capital, so how can she pretend not to see you?" From the Orthodox Academy to the Ivy League gathering, from Mei Li Shah's announcement on the Divine Avenue of the Li Palace to first rank of the first banner in the grand examination, too many people have intentionally allowed the Empress to see you. Chen Chongqing asked, "So what if she sees me?" The elder of heavenly secrets replied, "If you really are Crown Prince Xiaoming, then you are the Empress's most fatal flaw in defying the heavens and changing fate. Every day you stay in the capital, every day she sees you, is an unimaginable torment for her. If she continues to ignore you, then you will ultimately become the bane of her fate." 2 years ago, on the night you fixed your fated star in the Orthodox Academy, many people actually sensed it, and in the last few days I have been constantly calculating. In the end, I have confirmed that I was not wrong." After hearing this, Chen Chongqing fell silent for a very long time. The so-called starry sky, the so-called fate, they both appeared on the heavenly tome monolith. The so-called defying the heavens, the so-called changing fate, they had all been recorded in Wang Zhice's notebook. He had seen them, he had read them, and he clearly remembered that the lines formed by the stars on the heavenly tome monoliths were indefinite. In the opening chapter of Wang Zhice's notebook, it was written, "There is no fate. There is no fate," he whispered. Nightfall has a chapter that I like very much, and it's also a chapter that many readers like. It's called Life is a Question, Various Kinds of Idiots. This chapter is about to talk about the question. Yes, just like Nightfall, it's about to solve the question. Chapter 582. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets slightly creased his brow. "What did you say?" I said, "There is no such thing as fate." Chen Chongqing raised his head, his eyes calm and resolute. "Then there is naturally no fated bane." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets solemnly said, "Fate is in the starry sky." Chen Chongqing replied, "Then I ask Sir to first calculate it clearly, then tell me who I am and what I should do, not let me decide what to do myself. There are not many things that I cannot calculate clearly, and there are very few people, and you are one of them." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets' face suddenly became somewhat weathered. "Because your teacher can obscure the secrets of the heavens, and so can Black Robe. If this is their scheme, I truly do not have the confidence to break it." Upon hearing the name of the demon military advisor, Chen Chongqing's mood became rather strange. This matter is related to Black Robe? If my expectations are correct, your departure from Xining to the capital was a scheme aimed at the Empress. Perhaps because the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had used up too much of his energy in persuading him, he seemed rather tired. "I cannot calculate what they will do, but it is definitely related to you." Chen Chongqing fell silent once more. He recalled the words Su Yorong had said to him that night. He recalled the words Tang Tang had said to him in the Orthodox Academy long ago. Those words, and the words the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had said at the very beginning, all pointed directly at his teacher and the Pope. "I will not cooperate." These were very simple words, but to Chen Chongqing, it took a long time before he could spit them out with difficulty. Because this meant that he was beginning to doubt his teacher and the Pope. Perhaps his teacher and the Pope were using him for a grand goal. Just like how Han Shan had heavily wounded the Demon Lord. He could endure it, but he did not like it. Once was fine, but not too many times. But what if you have always been a part of this scheme? What if you have always been living in a scheme? What if your existence itself is a scheme? The Elder of Heavenly Secrets did not drop the matter because of his answer. Instead, he asked 3 questions in an extremely unyielding and even callous manner. Moreover, this wasn't the end. There were still a few more questions that were akin to icy rain, slapping towards Chen Chongqing's face. "If you really are Crown Prince Xiaoming, why did Principal Shang and the Pope want you to enter the capital? Could it be that they think they can hide from your Highness' all-seeing eye? No, they're even deliberately letting the Empress see you and pay attention to you. Why? Could it be that they want to send you to the Empress to be killed so that she can change her fate?" Chen Chongqing, don't try to answer these questions, because when you see the answer, you will already be a part of the answer. Before all of this happens, leave and disappear. Don't let anyone find you again. Chen Chongqing didn't want to continue listening. He stood up, looked at the Elder of Heavenly Secrets, and said, "In truth, if you want to resolve this problem, there is an even simpler method." "What? You can just kill me now." "No, I won't kill you." "Why?" The Elder of Heavenly Secrets calmly replied, "Because I will not make the choice for the Empress." Chen Chongqing calmly gazed at him and said, Then, I also ask that your highness not make the choice for me." After saying this, he did not linger any longer. He turned and walked out into the thick fog outside the garden. Gazing at his back, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets said with some exhaustion, "Disappear, just like Su Li. This is the greatest kindness to the world." Chen Chongqing stopped, but he said nothing. He took a bite of the peach in his hand and then walked into the fog. The fog gathered and dispersed, people left and people came. Not long after Chen Chongqing left, Su Yorong rowed a boat to the small island in the center of the lake and sat in the same position as before. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets said, "In truth, before you and Chen Chongqing, there was another person who also sat here." Su Yorong asked, "Who?" The Elder of Heavenly Secrets replied, "Lu Qing." Su Yorong thought about it and finally remembered this name. "I asked Lu Qing what sort of person Chen Chongqing was." The Elder of Heavenly Secrets continued, "He very seriously thought about it for a very long time, and then he said to me, 'Chen Chongqing is a good person.'" For a world-renowned assassin to have such an evaluation of Chen Chongqing, Su Yorong felt rather strange. "Then what about you? In your view, what sort of person is Chen Chongqing?" The Elder of Heavenly Secrets calmly asked her. This question was asked too calmly, the Elder's eyes also too calmly, so calmly that it seemed like he knew many secrets. No one knew what Su Yorong was feeling. The white veil gently drifted in the lake wind, seeming to merge with the fog. Her voice pierced through the veil, very soft, very certain. "He is a true person." Hearing this, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets was slightly moved. He had not expected Su Yorong to have such a high evaluation of him. Thinking of all the things that had happened to Chen Chongqing in these past 2 years, he realized that this evaluation was actually very accurate. To be able to maintain a pure and innocent heart in the secular world truly is not easy. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets sighed, then said, "Tell the Empress that if Chen Chongqing returns to the capital, kill him. Do not hesitate." The first sentence was praise, and the next sentence was to kill. Crowns covered the entire capital, and the people all desired to kill him. The garden was very quiet, the sound of the lake water lapping against the shore very clear. Su Yorong said nothing, only looked at the Elder. The fluttering white veil could conceal her perfect face, but it could not conceal her calm and unyielding gaze. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets did not meet her gaze. Standing up, he clasped his hands behind his back and gazed at the surface of the lake beyond the fog. In an emotionless voice, he said, "If you are unwilling, then take him and leave. Use your emotions, your intentions, your white crane, your childhood. No matter what method you use, the further you go, the better." Su Yorong gazed at the Elder's back and asked, "Just what did Sir calculate?" The Elder of Heavenly Secrets did not turn around. "He was unconscious for 3 days and 3 nights, so I calculated for 3 days and 3 nights. It was still a dense fog, only a ray of light." Su Yorong muttered, "Light?" That light was incomparably clear, just like Su Li's sword. The Elder of Heavenly Secrets finally said, "If he returns to the capital alive, the Empress will die. What will you choose?" Returning to the house, Chen Chong stood by the railing and gazed at the great lake in front of him, but he did not feel at ease. He thought about what the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had said, to leave like Su Li was the greatest kindness to the world. Then, where is the kindness this world has shown Senior Su Li? Where is the kindness it has shown me? Leaning against the railing and facing the wind, he fell into a long silence. Chapter 583. The Demon Lord's appearance had placed an enormous pressure on Chen Chongqing. The secret of his body had been discovered, and he was highly likely to have to face the greedy gazes of the entire world. The conversation on the island had placed even more pressure on him. It was also the secret of his body. His severed meridians would cause him to die in the near future, and this was also known by others. It turned out that those severed meridians had been blasted open by the sun wheel. It turned out that he really was a descendant of the Chern imperial clan. Then was he Crown Prince Xiaoming? If he was a descendant of the Chern imperial clan, then their meeting by the stream 16 years ago was naturally not a coincidence. His teacher had presumably long known of his background, but did his senior brother also know? This was the greatest pressure on him. He had to face many things squarely. If the Demon Lord's appearance in Mount Han really was a trap, then it meant that he might have been abandoned. If his journey from Xining village to the capital was also a trap, then just what sort of role had he been playing this entire time? In the past, whether it was applying to the 6 Ivies or participating in the grand examination, no matter what sort of obstacles or difficulties he encountered, he was never too worried. This was because he believed that his roots were in Xining village's old temple, that his true confidence lay in his teacher and senior brother. Now, he realized that all this might have been an illusion. His trust was no longer as certain, so how could his Tao heart be as serene as before? If he could not even trust Senior Yu Ren, who could he rely on in this world? Chen Chongqing was often praised by others for possessing a composure that far exceeded his age, but he was still just a 16-year-old youth. When matters had developed to this point, developed to this state, he finally found it somewhat unbearable. He stared in a daze at the mist on the surface of the lake, his mood rather sad. Footsteps suddenly came from the platform. Tang 36 and Zhixue walked over. They looked at Chen Chongqing's back, somewhat worried. Ever since Chen Chongqing had returned, he had not spoken. He seemed extremely silent, even somewhat lonely. It was obvious that something had happened. Just what did the Elder of Heavenly Secrets say to you? Tang 36 ultimately could not hold back and walked to his side. Chen Chongqing leaned against the railing, still unwilling to speak. He seemed rather perplexed. Zhixue suddenly said, "I don't believe that there are problems in this world that cannot be solved." Chen Chongqing straightened his body and turned to him. He very seriously asked, "If there are, then what?" Zhixue's answer was very much in line with his personality, simple and unyielding. "At worst, it's just death," Tang 36 added, "and even if you want to die, it's not that easy." Chen Chongqing looked at them and suddenly said, "Do any of you believe that I am Crown Prince Xiaoming?" When he didn't want to say anything, he naturally wouldn't say anything. But in the end, he was still somewhat unwilling, so he opened his mouth and said the most important thing. Hearing this, Tang 36 glanced at Zhixue, somewhat nervous. Actually, this rumor had long existed in the capital, but no matter if it was him or Chen Chongqing himself, they both felt that it was too ridiculous, so they didn't take it seriously. But since Chen Chongqing had asked such a formal question, it meant that the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had told Chen Chongqing about this matter, and there was a possibility that it was true. Zhixue remained expressionless and gave Tang 36 no help. Tang 36's expression froze for a second and then he laughed. He looked at Chen Chongqing and said, "What the hell are you talking about? That's a few years difference." Chen Chongqing didn't laugh. He quietly looked into his eyes and said, "Don't you often say that I'm precocious and that I'm like an old man? Just because you're precocious means that you can grow a few more years? Could it be that the precocious pigs of Black Mountain Hollow are all older than their brethren?" Tang 36 said with a face full of ridicule. Chen Chongqing did not get angry at such an inelegant comparison, nor did he laugh. He continued to earnestly ask, "If I am, then what?" Tang 36 grew quiet. He looked at him and earnestly said, "Even if you are, so what? Just treat this as a plate of pig's ears, a salad." Chen Chongqing knew that he was advising him to ignore it, but, "Will the Divine Empress let me live?" Tang 36 asked. "In the Garden of Zhou, is Nank prepared to let you live? On the mountain path, is the Demon Lord prepared to let you live?" Chen Chongqing understood what he meant and the perplexed expression on his face gradually faded. Just because other people want you to die doesn't mean that you have to die, no matter who it is, Nank, the Demon Lord, or the Empress. Tang 36 looked into his eyes and said, "Think on the bright side. If you really are Crown Prince Xiaoming, then as long as you survive, you will be the #1 successor to the throne of the Great Zhou." When he said these words, his expression was extremely serious, but the contents of his words were not serious at all. He knew that Chen Chongqing had no interest in something like the throne. He just wanted to use these words to lighten the oppressive atmosphere. Speaking of which, the Pope or the Emperor of the Great Zhou, which one is better? He asked Chen Chongqing with a smile. Chen Chongqing did not answer this question. The one who answered was Zhixiu, the wolf youth who had always been extremely apathetic to the affairs of the world, somewhat clumsily suggested, "It's still better to be the emperor. He has an army under his command and 38 divine generals. In the future, he will be the commander-in-chief in the war against the demons. Truly wonderful. Having this sort of friend is truly wonderful." Chen Chongqing thought to himself. He didn't know if Xining village was fabricated, didn't know if his existence was fabricated, but he could at least confirm that his days in the capital were incomparably real. "Thank you," he said to Tang 36 and Zhixiu, and then he sensed something and said, "I have some matters that I need to take care of first." Zhixiu did not know what he needed to take care of, but Tang 36 very easily guessed, especially when he sensed the ripples of qi from his magical artifact and saw the figure of a skirt flitting across the white sand and shallow water below. This made him very depressed, thinking to himself, as expected of a guy who forgets his friends at the sight of beauty. That date stone quietly lay in the white sand, in the clear water of the lake. Perhaps because it carried her qi, this date stone became an object that many of the fish in the lake were extremely willing to get close to. Its surface had been pecked clean and was extremely glossy. It looked just like a stone carved with a few lines. Chen Chongqing and Su Yorong sat on the edge of the platform, their feet submerged in the lake. They did not intentionally sit closer, their shoulders occasionally lightly touching. This sort of distance, this sort of rhythm, this sort of tranquility, was what they were most accustomed to and also what they liked the most, just like how they felt about each other. Su Yorong softly said, "To have this sort of friend is something to be very happy about." Chen Chongqing said, "You don't have this sort of friend?" Then he remembered that since she was young, she was the little princess that the entire capital cared for, the successor that the divine queen and the saintess carefully cultivated. From the age of 5, she had already left the ordinary world, so it was indeed very difficult for her to have ordinary, but extremely precious friends. Su Yorong slightly smiled and said, "All the senior and junior sisters in the temple. Even the elders except for the teacher are very respectful to me, so there is no way for us to casually chat. But I do have some acquaintances in a town at the foot of the mountain that I can talk to. I will introduce them to you in the future." Hearing this, Chen Chongqing was a little curious, thinking to himself, how could there be acquaintances in a normal town? If we really talk about friends. Actually, the seniors and juniors in Li Mountain are more similar, but since we are not in the same place, the chances of contact are relatively small. I heard that the place where Qiu Shanjun practices the sword is not far from Cijian Temple? What do you want to ask? Nothing. Okay, you are not wrong. I have always treated my senior as an extremely important friend. The problem is, he will definitely not think that way. Princess Luoluo has taken you as her master, but I don't know what she is thinking. I can't outtalk you. Because you are unreasonable. Fine. Why aren't you saying anything? What do you want to hear? Are you really Crown Prince Xiaoming? The wooden platform below the small building instantly became quiet. The lake water lightly swayed, the white sand was still and motionless, and the fish were swimming far away, as if sensing the change in the atmosphere. Chen Chongqing was silent for a very long time, then said, I don't know, but I don't think so. Su Yorong slightly tilted her head, lightly leaning on his shoulder. Chapter 584. In the garden of Zhou, when she was heavily injured, she had leaned on his shoulder. Later on, she had never been this close to him, not even on those snowy nights in the capital. This was a true leaning. She had placed her body and weight on his shoulder. What passed over was not only the girl's qi and warmth, but also comfort and intentions. Chen Chongqing accepted it and his mood became less heavy. Relax, I'm fine. Su Yorong softly said, but since Heavenly Secrets thinks this way, the Empress will assuredly think the same. Chen Chongqing was quiet for a while, then said, I have no way of stopping what other people think. Su Yorong knew that this was a matter that could not be helped. She also had no way of stopping what the Empress thought. Just as Chen Chongqing had said that night, the Empress had never been a good person in the ordinary sense of the word, and it was very difficult to use the ethics and morals of an ordinary person to view her. The rumors say that after the Empress was banished to the 100-herb garden by Emperor Taizong, she met my master and His Holiness the Pope, and only then did she grasp the method to defy the heavens and change fate in this way. They should have been two people of the same path that deeply trusted each other, so why did they later become mortal enemies? No one knows what exactly happened before the bloody incident of the Orthodox Academy. I only vaguely heard that the Empress and Principal Shang made some sort of agreement, but the Empress did not follow through on the agreement, so the two became enemies. That agreement presumably was about the imperial throne. It should be. Why was the Empress not willing to return the imperial throne to a member of the imperial clan? I asked her this question many years ago. The Empress said that it was because the Churn imperial clan did not have a single descendant capable of shouldering the imperial throne. There are several hundred descendants of the imperial clan scattered throughout the provinces and counties. Is there not a single person capable of shouldering the heavy responsibility of the country? Chen Chongqing didn't finish this sentence. Su Yorong understood what he meant and said, There isn't. Chen Chongqing said, I hear that the Prince of Xiang of Prince Chen Lu's bloodline has a rather decent reputation. That's just a superficial reputation. When the Prince of Xiang was mentioned, a hint of derision appeared on Su Yorong's face. In truth, this prince has been licentious since he was a child. He was originally extremely talented in cultivation, reaching the great accomplishment of his son Wheel at the age of 10. But in the end, because of his own character, he never had any hope of stepping into the divine domain. Is stepping into the divine domain very important to inheriting the throne? Yes, very important. Why? If you want to become the sovereign of the human race, the first thing you need is not virtue, but power. If he wanted to become the sovereign of the human race, he would need great power. This was not difficult to understand, because the demons were in the north, and their evil intentions had not died. This world could be flooded at any time, and the flames of war would spread. By the same logic, if one wanted to live a better life, free from anxiety and fear, one would need greater strength. Any external things could only improve one's mood, boost one's confidence, and enrich one's life, but they couldn't solve the root of the problem. Friendship and love are beautiful, and can sometimes save your life and soul, but the most reliable thing is still your own strength. Entering Mount Han, encountering the Demon Lord, learning many secrets from the Elder of Heavenly Secrets, Chen Chongqing faced an unimaginable pressure, but it was also a motivation. He had to increase his strength as quickly as possible. At the very least, he could not be like he was when he encountered the Demon Lord on the mountain path, where he did not even have a chance to retaliate. Even though he had countless magical artifacts and treasures, he could not display their full power and could only wait for death to come. He decided to find an opportunity during the Boiling Stone Summit to break into star condensation. When he received the yellow paper umbrella from the Tang Old Master in Wenshui, he was only at the upper level of ethereal opening, but he was able to endure the full-powered attack of a peak star condensation expert. If he really could successfully break into star condensation, the yellow paper umbrella might be able to survive under the gaze of the Demon Lord and the Divine Empress for a little longer. That period of time would not be too long, perhaps only a few breaths, but it was still extremely important to him, because besides the yellow paper umbrella, he still had the myriad swords in the sheath, and the heavenly tome monoliths that had transformed into stone pearls. Most importantly, he still had the Garden of Zhou. After breaking into star condensation, even someone as powerful as the Demon Lord or the Divine Empress would find it very difficult to directly sever his connection to space. Then he only needed to buy a very short amount of time to hide in the Garden of Zhou. These were external pressures and needs. His decision to break into star condensation was more for his internal mental need. Only by becoming stronger could he be calmer in the face of the unforeseeable road ahead. The dual mental pressures from both external and internal were so intense and direct. As for the words the Elder of Heavenly Secrets had said in the garden, he had already intentionally forgotten them. If he did not continue cultivating, or even scattered the true essence in his body, would he be able to delay the eruption of the injuries to his meridians for a period of time? How long was a period of time? 1 year? 2 years? What was the difference between 20 and 22? More importantly, even if he wanted to struggle at death's door, would he, who had lost his strength, be allowed to continue living? After making his decision, Chen Chongqing used an unimaginable willpower to shake off that frightening pressure and regain his calm. Only Su Yorong, Tang 36, and Zhixiu, the people closest to him, were still unable to relax, and were even more worried. Because this sort of calm was somewhat unreasonable, somewhat frightening, just like the ocean before the arrival of a storm. The storm had not arrived, but the people participating in the Boiling Stone Summit had arrived one after another. Logically speaking, the cultivators participating in the summit should have all arrived several days ago, but because of that great incident, the Heavenstone Array had sealed off all of Mount Han for a period of time. As a result, some of the unlucky or extremely lucky cultivators had been stopped outside the mountain for a period of time. With Chen Chongqing's current status, he naturally did not need to welcome anyone. He calmly rested in his house, preparing for his breakthrough. Naturally, there would be people reporting to him. After Zhonghui, Scholarly Manor sent 2 more teachers. To his regret, Wang Pe did not come. It seemed that the Heavenstones of Mount Han, to an expert of his level, truly did not have much value in comprehending them. The people from the Mount Li Sword sect arrived. Qiushan Jun, who had not appeared in public for a very long time, still did not appear. For some reason, Chen Chongqing sighed in relief. It was probably because he also did not know how he should react if he saw Su Yorong and that proud son of heaven conversing intimately. The people that came were all old friends or acquaintances. Go Hanshi, Guan Feibai, and Liang Banhu had all arrived. Upon hearing this news, Chen Chongqing was rather happy. It really is like the Ivy Festival or the Grand Examination from 2 years ago. It's still the same people. Zhixiu replied, "One person is missing." Chen Chongqing stared blankly. He realized that Zhixiu's face was rather cold, and then he remembered that Qi Jian had not appeared. Tang 36 patted Zhixiu on the shoulder to comfort him. Chen Chongqing stood by the railing, looking at the bustling scene in the distance. Hearing the faint voice of Guan Feibai, he wanted to go over, but there was no way. It was still the same words. His current status was different. As the successor to the Pope, it was not convenient for him to visit any elder of any sect or young geniuses like the Divine State's 7 laws. It's fine. Go Hanshi has always done things prudently. He will definitely immediately pay you a visit, Tang 36 said, then glanced at Zhixiu. I know how you feel, and I also don't like those guys, but in a little while, can you not be too disgruntled? After all, we are currently representing the Orthodox Academy, so we have to maintain Chen Chongqing's dignity. Just as Tang 36 predicted, Go Hanshi and the other disciples of the Mountly Sword sect had just been welcomed to the lakeshore by the Pavilion of Heavenly Secret. Without resting, they simply washed up and came to pay a visit. Just as Tang 36 predicted, Zheshio's complexion was truly very unsightly. Guan Feibai's complexion was also very unsightly, because he had to follow Go Hanshi in bowing to Chen Chongsheng. Liang Banhu's expression was rather complex, because although Liang Xiaoxiao had been proven to have committed suicide in the Garden of Zhou, it was still related to Chen Chongsheng. Chen Chongsheng could sit in a chair and accept the bows of the Mountly Sword sect disciples. In this year, many changes had occurred. But on the mountain path, when Zhong Hui bowed to him, he had responded with the courtesy of someone of the same generation, let alone now. Seeing Chen Chongsheng very seriously return the greeting without any reluctance, Liang Banhu's expression became somewhat gentler, and Guan Feibai's complexion finally improved. However, when he saw that Zheshio's complexion was still so unsightly, his complexion became even more unsightly, and his words also became unpleasant. "I'm warning you, don't have any improper thoughts about my junior sister." Tang 36 had previously advised Zheshio to calm down, but now that he heard Guan Feibai's words, he had long since forgotten the word calm. He looked at Guan Feibai and sneered, "What do you mean improper thoughts? Is your junior sister a princess? Even if she's the demon lord's granddaughter, no one in Xuelao City would recognize her." When it came to quarreling, there were truly very few people who were Tang 36's match. Firstly, it was because he was the young master of a noble clan, with a deep background, yet he did not have the demeanor of a young master, not caring about the word reputation in the slightest. Secondly, it was because his words were sharp and focused on attacking his opponent's vitals, making them extremely difficult to defend against. Just like this short sentence of his. It had clearly been a spur-of-the-moment idea, but it had taken a few turns in the middle, and then his sword had stabbed straight at the Mountly Sword sect's greatest secret and greatest problem. Even someone as good-tempered as Go Hanshi could not help but frown and glance behind him. Even Chen Chongsheng, who had long since grown accustomed to his conduct, could not help but shake his head and glance outside the hall. The priests of the Orthodoxy and the accompanying disciples of the Mountly Sword sect that had followed Go Hanshi and the other two into the house understood and hurriedly retreated. The two sides had only just met and there were already signs of a falling out. Who knew what would happen in the house next? The people involved might not care, but they did not dare to participate or even listen. Chapter 585. Guan Feibai's personality was both ruthless and violent. How could he possibly endure this? He coldly rebuked, "A piece of trash like you that only knows how to spend your family's money dares to criticize the matters of my Mountly." Tang 36 jeered, "My family is just that rich. What does it have to do with you? And besides, I used 3 days last year to earn a Clear Lake restaurant. Do I have to tell you?" Guan Feibai coldly snorted, "Then what does the matter between my Mountly Sword sect and that wolf cub have to do with you? If you're really that bored, then you might as well seize the time to learn a few more sword styles. Otherwise, how could the stately sole grandson of the Tang clan not even be able to enter the proclamation of golden distinction?" Tang 36 paled at these words. It must be known that not being able to enter the proclamation of golden distinction was his greatest regret. Although his mood had improved somewhat upon learning that Zheshio and Su Moyu had also failed to enter the proclamation, it had to be known that this fellow's name was currently on the proclamation of golden distinction. He clenched his teeth and said, "No matter how you put it, Zheshio and Qi Jian are in love with each other. What right do you have to control them? If you're really that bored and have no way of surpassing Zhong Hui, then you might as well practice your own culinary skills. F***CK, green peppers stir-fried bacon, and you actually put sugar in it? Is there something wrong with your brain, or are you people of the South all so eccentric when cooking? Besides Chen Chongsheng, who else can make delicious food? Guan Feibai was enraged. Let alone cooking, you break 7 out of 10 dishes just to wash the dishes, and you still have the face to say that my culinary skills are bad? This was naturally the story of the time when they were viewing the monoliths and comprehending the Tao in the mausoleum of books, when they lived in the small courtyard Sun Mei had left behind. The relationship between the Orthodox Academy and the Mountly Sword sect was truly rather complicated. It was very difficult to explain with a few simple sentences, especially between the youths of this generation. Whether it was because of that engagement or because the entire world knew of the relationship between Qiushan Jun and Su Yorong, or because of the competition between them. From the Ivy Festival to the Grand Examination, at the very beginning, the two sides were naturally opponents, even enemies. But in the mausoleum of books, the two sides lived under the same roof, ate from the same pot, viewed the monoliths, comprehended the Tao, and exchanged their experiences. Their enmity gradually faded, and they became familiar with each other. Especially after Chen Chongqing escorted Su Li south, the two sides had developed quite a friendship. But they were all young people, young cultivation geniuses. The youngsters of the Tradition Academy and the 6 Laws of the Divine Kingdom of Lishan Sword Sect were the most favored and were often compared. The competition between the two sides seemed to be going on for a long time. Who would really be convinced? The atmosphere in the small building became more and more tense. Tang 36 and Guan Fei Bai's argument became louder and more intense. Even though in the end, both sides still retained some of their rationality, especially Tang 36. He didn't directly curse the other's ancestors like he did with the challengers from the Ivy Academies. But in the end, they still argued for real. Guan Feibai's face was very pale. It was not because he had applied powder, nor was it because he was injured, but because he was angered. Senior, I can't bear it anymore. I want to challenge him in the Boiling Stone Summit. These words caused Liang Banhu's expression to subtly change. It must be known that before coming, Go Hanshi had already told them that although the Mountly Sword sect and the Orthodox Academy could not be considered allies, they were not enemies either. In the Boiling Stone Summit, unless absolutely necessary, it was best not to fight with each other. Tang 36 was also angered. He yelled, Chen Chongqing, you can bear it, but I can't. In the Boiling Stone Summit, you have to beat this guy into a pig's head. As they said this, they very naturally turned to look at Go Hanshi and Chen Chongqing. Yet where were the figures of Go Hanshi and Chen Chongqing? Where are they? Tang 36 asked in shock. They left, Zhishio said, then turned to Guan Fei Bai and said with an indifferent expression, In the summit I will challenge you. Saying this, he also turned and left the small building. Guan Fei Bai stared blankly for a moment before reacting. Looking at Zhishio's back, he sneered, Do you think I'm afraid of you? Tang 36 sneered on the side. If you're not afraid of him, why were you so stunned for a moment? Guan Fei Bai flew into a rage. If you have the ability, then go up yourself. One moment you're yelling at Chen Chongqing, the next moment you're letting him. Do you know what shame is? Tang 36's expression did not change. I don't even want face, so how would I know what shame is? Not satisfied? Then bite me. Chen Chongqing and Go Hanshi had long since left the room and arrived at the high balcony. Standing by the railing, they looked at the lake. They knew very well that the quarrel in the building would not end in a short time, and that there was no meaning. Listening there would only pollute their ears. Just why? Chen Chongqing looked at Go Hanshi and asked very seriously, The mixed blood of humans and demi-humans truly is looked down upon, but I know very well that the Mountly Sword sect, at least Senior Su Li is not this kind of person. Why does he have to stop this marriage? Go Hanshi knew that Chen Chongqing was a very direct person. Without a sufficient reason, it was impossible to convince him, so he said straightforwardly, Zhishio doesn't have long to live. Chen Chongqing had thought of many reasons. Through Su Yurong's help, he had also heard similar arguments, but he didn't think that it really was like this. Zheshio's body truly does have hidden dangers, but they can definitely be cured. He had treated Zheshio for a very long time, and even now, he had not stopped treating him. He knew that a strange illness like the tide rush of blood was truly very difficult to completely cure, but through the reconstruction of Luoluo and Xianyuan Po's meridians, he had gained a lot of experience in this aspect. He was confident that sooner or later, he would be able to come up with the most perfect treatment. Go Hanshi glanced at him in surprise and asked, "You know?" Chen Chongqing replied, "I've already begun to treat him." Go Hanshi thought for a while, then shook his head. "Martial Granduncle has determined that he will die young. You have no way of curing him." Chen Chongqing replied, "In other aspects I am inferior to Senior Su Li, but in this aspect, he is inferior to me." Go Hanshi thought of the widely circulated lineage of his master, and realized that this was indeed the case. Present, Daoist Ji was not very famous in the world, but several hundred years ago, he was the world's most outstanding doctor. Moreover, his true identity was Principal Shang of the Orthodox Academy. "You can convince me, but on this matter, you first have to convince Martial Granduncle," Go Hanshi said. "Otherwise, I will not agree to Zheshio going to Mount Li to see her." Chen Chongqing replied, "There's no need to be like this. It's just a meeting, I guarantee that nothing else will happen." Go Hanshi calmly looked at him and said, "That is Mount Li, the sect of 10,000 swords. Don't think of those elopement stories written in storybook." The youths of the Orthodox Academy truly did have this sort of idea, and had even made preparations in secret. Now that they had been so easily exposed, Chen Chongqing couldn't help but feel somewhat embarrassed. "If you're sure that you can cure Zheshio's illness, then why can't you wait until you've truly cured him before discussing this matter?" Go Hanshi had spoken of a very crucial problem. Chen Chongqing replied, "Lovesickness is also an illness. Zheshio's side is still fine, but what about Qi Jian?" Go Hanshi thought of his junior sister's angry shouts on that night and didn't know how to respond. After a while, he said, "I will pass on your words to her." Chen Chongqing was somewhat at ease. He thought, if I can hold on to hope, Qi Jian's days at Mount Li will probably be a little better. From the moment I left Hubei until today, I've already driven 3,000 kilometers. I'm so tired that I'm an idiot. For the next 2 days, I still have to run 700 kilometers every day. I really can't write anymore. I'll ask for 2 days of leave. After returning to the Qin Kingdom, I'll return to my normal state of work as quickly as possible and firmly write down the first climax of Heaven's Chosen. Chapter 586. When one did not see eye to eye, besides not speaking, one could also change the subject. Chen Chongqing was not good at chatting, but that did not mean that Go Hanshi was not good at it. Moreover, he truly did have some matters that he wished to obtain an accurate answer from Chen Chongqing. Was it really that person that entered Mount Han? Chen Chongqing nodded. Go Hanshi was quiet for a while before he could digest the shock in his heart. He sighed. "The demon lord personally attacked, but you were still able to survive. In the future, you will surely have good fortune." Chen Chongqing shook his head. He was keenly aware that the demon lord had come to Mount Han to eat him. If he had only wanted to kill him, there was no way he could have survived. From the house by the lake, the occasional sound of fierce quarreling could be heard, like the cry of swords. On the balcony of the house, Chen Chongqing and Go Hanshi stood side by side, their clothes fluttering in the wind. On a distant rock, Zhong Hui quietly watched the activity in that direction. He said nothing, his thoughts inscrutable. By the lake were many cultivators from the various sections. They were looking at the distant Chen Chongqing and Go Hanshi, and some were also looking at Zhong Hui. Seeing these scenes, seeing the youths in these scenes, whether it was the experts of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets or the elders of the various sects, they all felt very emotional. In the last 2 years, many outstanding young cultivating geniuses had appeared on the continent. Chen Chongqing and Go Hanshi, those two seemingly childish fellows arguing in the house, and even Zhong Hui standing on the rock were all among them, not to mention Su Yorong and Qiushan Jun. At such a similar age, there were actually so many talented young geniuses. It was truly an extremely rare thing. Apart from Wang Po's generation. No, even Wang Po's generation was inferior to these young people when they were so young. If one wanted to make a comparison, perhaps one really had to go back to the magnificent great era of 1,000 years ago. It truly was an era of blooming wildflowers. I wonder which of these youths will be the most outstanding after so many years. No matter who is the most outstanding in the end, I think that we should all thank Chen Chongqing. Why? Because that night of starlight in the mausoleum of books helped these youths break through that most difficult of barriers. The chatter stopped and the scene became quiet. The elders of the various sects and the experts of the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets recalled the life and death situation they and their peers had when they broke through to ethereal opening. When they looked at these young geniuses again, their gazes became rather complex, filled with envy and even jealousy. And all of this was because of Chen Chongqing. The forced postponement of the Boiling Stone Summit finally began on an ordinary and unremarkable day at the end of summer. It was held in that elegant and gorgeous pavilion on the shore of the Heaven Lake, but because of the Demon Lord's appearance in Mount Han, the atmosphere was somewhat oppressive. Moreover, compared to previous years, there were far fewer famous people attending, making it somewhat boring. Not a single one of the top 10 experts of the Proclamation of Liberation was present. Perhaps they were like Painted Armor Xiao Zhang, who regarded the Grand Assembly of Boiling Stone as nothing, or perhaps they were like Liang Wangsun, who found it inconvenient to attend for some reason. The most miserable was naturally the demi-human expert Xiaoda. He had been too heavily injured by the Demon Lord and had been sent back to White Emperor City a few days ago. Fortunately, the Orthodoxy had sent out an enormous force. Besides the future Pope Chen Chongqing, there were also two prefects, Linghai Jiwang and Mao Chu. The Holy Maiden of the South, Su Yorong, had also personally come. This could be considered giving the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets enough face, as well as giving the cultivators that had traveled tens of thousands of li to participate in the Boiling Stone Summit a great deal of spirit. As the host, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets sat at the very center. Su Yorong, who had the most exalted status, sat to his right, behind layers of white gauze. Chen Chongqing sat on the opposite side. To the cultivators from the various lands, the Elder of Heavenly Secrets naturally had an exalted status and was also very mysterious. To be able to see his true appearance with their own eyes today was naturally a very precious opportunity. However, the vast majority of gazes still rested on Chen Chongqing and Su Yorong. These gazes were filled with reverence, yearning, and of course, even more so with curiosity. This was especially true for those cultivators that did not come from the capital. The current world was extremely clear about everything about Su Yorong and Chen Chongqing. This summer, he and she had not even reached 17. They were the youngest upper-level ethereal opening cultivators in history. Most importantly, she was the Holy Maiden of the South, and he was the next pope. To be able to reach such a level of cultivation at such a young age and even possess such status was rarely seen in history. They had once been engaged. If not for a few unexpected occurrences, they would have become husband and wife. If this point was taken into account, this story would seem even more legendary. When everyone's gazes rested on Chen Chongqing and Su Yorong, the steward's voice from the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets seemed to fade into the distance, replaced by countless whispers. This young man and woman were truly far too famous. Their story was also truly too famous. The young Taoist entered the capital and was despised by the Divine General's estate. The marriage contract appeared at the Ivy Festival, and as the events of the world changed, the young man became the successor to the Pope. The Divine General's estate wished to renew their former fate, but they were cruelly slapped in the face and forced to break off the engagement. However, after the snowstorm on the Bridge of Helplessness, the young man and the young woman met for the first time, and the situation seemed to have changed once more. Chen Chongqing seemed to want to change his mind and marry a beautiful girl into his household, but he was coldly rejected by Su Yorong. Thus, many people knew of the scene of the young man standing in the snow in front of the palace on a snowy night. Twists and turns, climaxes rising one after another. If this had not happened in reality, everyone would have believed it to be a play, and the most cliché kind at that. And the most cliché was also the most brilliant, the one the masses loved to see and hear the most. Today, many people had finally seen the male and female leads of this play. How could they not be curious and excited? Chen Chongqing and Su Yorong did nothing. They just sat there, yet they had seized 90% of the attention of the crowd and taken all the glory of the gathering. But in the end, this was the Boiling Stone Summit. No matter how much the crowd wanted to stare at them, they had to temporarily shift their gazes to the black table at the end of the path. On the table was an ancient red lacquer plate, and on the plate rested a black stone about the size of a fruit pit. Black table, red plate, black stone. Black and red alternated, exceptionally bright and abnormally dazzling. Chen Chongqing's gaze rested on the black stone and found it difficult to shift away. His expression did not change, but his heart was slightly disturbed. This was not one of those stones he had seen in the sky a few days ago, nor was it one of those stones that could be seen everywhere in the lake or between the cliffs. Mount Han was littered with heaven stones. This was something Su Yorong had confirmed with him, yet this stone was clearly somewhat different from the others. This stone was much smaller than those heaven stones, and it had been carefully placed on the red plate, so its treatment was very different. Crucially, he could faintly sense a familiar ripple of qi from this small black stone. He gazed at the nearby heavy curtains. Su Yorong sat behind the curtains. Rushing about is hard, but also a blessing. In these past few days, I've run several thousand kilometers through the great rivers and mountains of my motherland, and I've seen many stones. In a few days, if I have the time and the energy to chat with everyone, I'll give a good report. If I don't have the time and the energy, then I'll keep it and treat it as my own life experience. In short, traveling 10,000 li is truly a wonderful thing.